Hey guys, tonight we're stepping through the rotting wooden door of a 14th century plague house, where the air hangs thick with the sweet stench of decay, and the only thing more dangerous than the disease itself is the so-called medical care you're about to receive. Picture yourself standing in a dimly lit chamber where shadows dance across stone walls stained with substances you'd rather not identify, while somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls for the latest victim of medieval medicine's finest efforts. You probably won't survive this, not because the plague is particularly merciful, but because everything designed to help you will likely finish the job first. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. I love seeing our little nighttime community spread across the globe, probably all infinitely safer than where we're about to venture together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The heavy wooden door creaks shut behind you with a finality that makes your stomach drop. You're standing in what was once someone's home, maybe a merchant's house or a small monastery, but now serves as London's newest plague house, hastily converted when the Black Death arrived like an unwelcome dinner guest who brought the entire apocalypse as a +1. The year is 1348, and you've just volunteered for what might be history's most poorly thought-out medical experiment. Your eyes slowly adjust to the gloom, and you begin to make out the details of your new temporary residence. The main hall stretches before you, its once proud timber beams now sagging under the weight of despair and poor architectural decisions. Straw covers the floor, not the fresh, golden straw you might imagine, but a matted, brownish carpet that squelches unpleasantly underfoot and releases clouds of dust that make you cough. That cough, by the way, immediately marks you as suspicious to everyone within earshot, because in 1348, any respiratory sound is basically a death sentence announcement. Along the walls, rough wooden beds have been arranged in neat rows, though neat might be generous given that most are occupied by writhing, moaning figures in various stages of what medieval medicine cheerfully calls humoral imbalance. The beds themselves are marvels of medieval engineering, and by marvels, I mean they're essentially wooden boxes filled with more of that questionable straw, covered with whatever fabric could be scrounged up. No springs, no padding, just you and the unforgiving reality of 14th century comfort standards. The lighting situation would make a modern fire marshal weep. Flickering candles and oil lamps cast dancing shadows everywhere, creating the sort of atmosphere that's either mysteriously romantic or deeply terrifying, depending on your perspective on medieval ambience. The candles themselves burn with an odd, smoky flammatheory made from tallow, which is essentially animal fat, so you're literally breathing in the essence of deceased livestock while trying to recover from plague. It's like aromatherapy, if aromatherapy involved the concentrated essence of medieval barnyard. Speaking of breathing, let's talk about the air quality in your new home. Imagine the stuffiest, most poorly ventilated room you've ever been in. Then multiply that sensation by about 50 and add the distinct bouquet of human misery. The windows, what few exist, are covered with oiled parchment or thin wooden shutters that let in virtually no fresh air, because fresh air, according to medieval medical wisdom, is basically poison that carries disease on invisible wings. You're essentially living in a hermetically sealed container of concentrated medieval breathing. The temperature regulation system consists of whatever the weather decides, plus some body heat from your fellow sufferers. In winter, you'll shiver under thin woolen blankets that feel like they were woven from the dreams of slightly disappointed sheep. In summer, you'll slowly cook in your own juices while wearing the same woolen clothing that medieval fashion demands, because apparently seasonal clothing adjustments hadn't been invented yet. The concept of climate control was still several centuries away from being a twinkle in anyone's eye. Your fellow residents in this establishment present a fascinating cross-section of medieval society. all united by their shared poor decision to contract bubonic plague. There's Master Geoffrey, the wool merchant who swears his illness came from handling fleece infected by cursed sheep, a theory that sounds ridiculous until you remember that in 1348, cursed sheep are considered a legitimate medical diagnosis. Lady Margaret occupies the bed nearest the window, not because she's privileged, but because everyone believes the bad air will hit her first, thereby protecting the rest of you through her noble sacrifice. The staff of this fine establishment consists of people who either drew the shortest straws in human history or possess the kind of medieval optimism that borders on delusion. Brother Thomas, a monk who serves as head physician, genuinely believes that prayer and bloodletting can cure anything, up to and including divine punishment for humanity's collective sins. His medical training consists of having read exactly 3 books, none of which contained anything resembling accurate information about disease transmission, treatment, or basic human anatomy. Sister Agnes handles what passes for nursing duties, which primarily involve ladling mysterious broths into wooden bowls and offering encouraging words like, "God's will be done," and "perhaps tomorrow you'll feel better," or "perhaps you'll join the heavenly choir." Her bedside manner is impeccable, assuming you find comfort in constant reminders of your impending mortality delivered with a cheerful smile. The daily routine in your plague house follows a schedule that would make a modern hospital administrator question their career choices. Dawn breaks with the sound of Brother Thomas ringing a small bell and offering morning prayers for the living, followed immediately by prayers for those who didn't make it through the night. This dual-purpose prayer system is remarkably efficient, though somewhat depressing for those still conscious enough to appreciate the implications. Breakfast consists of whatever thin gruel the kitchen managed to produce from ingredients of questionable origin and even more questionable freshness. The concept of food safety regulations won't be invented for several centuries, so you're essentially playing medieval roulette every time you accept a meal. The gruel itself has the consistency of wallpaper paste and a flavor profile that suggests the cook learned their craft during a famine and never quite recovered from the experience. Historians still argue whether medieval plague houses were genuinely intended as medical facilities or simply served as socially acceptable places for the dying to gather and expire in an organized fashion. The evidence suggests a bit of both, with heavy emphasis on the latter. The mortality rate in these establishments hovered somewhere around almost everyone, which even by medieval standards was considered less than ideal for a healthcare facility. The walls themselves tell stories of previous occupants through a fascinating collection of scratched messages, prayers, and what appear to be last wills and testaments carved into the stone with whatever sharp objects people could find. Reading these inscriptions while lying in your own bed of questionable straw provides hours of entertainment, assuming your idea of entertainment includes contemplating the mortality of strangers who occupied your exact spot months or years earlier. Medical examinations in your plague house follow protocols that would make a modern physician question everything they thought they knew about diagnostic procedures. Brother Thomas approaches each patient with a combination of religious fervor and scientific confidence that would be admirable if it weren't so completely misguided. His primary diagnostic tool is observation not of symptoms, which would be logical, but of moral character and spiritual worthiness, which he believes directly correlate with disease severity. The treatment philosophy operates on the principle that illness represents either divine punishment for sin or an imbalance of bodily humors that can be corrected through aggressive intervention. This means your recovery depends not on rest, nutrition, or sanitation concepts that haven't been invented yet, but on your ability to withstand a series of treatments designed by people who thought the human body worked like a particularly complicated wine barrel that occasionally needed draining. Your sleeping arrangements include a straw-filled mattress that's been used by an unknown number of previous occupants, none of whom necessarily survived their stay. The blankets carry the accumulated essence of everyone who's ever shivered beneath them, creating a sort of textile archaeology project that you're now part of. The pillow, such as it is, consists of a cloth sack filled with whatever soft material could be found, usually more straw, sometimes feathers from birds that died of causes you'd rather not contemplate. As evening approaches on your first day, the reality of your situation begins to settle in with the weight of a medieval tapestry soaked in rain. You're surrounded by people who are either dying or recovering through sheer miraculous intervention, attended by medical professionals whose knowledge of human anatomy comes primarily from religious texts and folk wisdom passed down through generations of well-meaning but fundamentally clueless healers. The sounds of your new environment create a symphony of medieval suffering that no composer would ever willingly recreate. Coughing echoes from every corner, punctuated by the occasional moan, the shuffle of feet on straw, and the constant drip of water from a roof that was never quite watertight. Brother Thomas moves through the room like a benevolent specter, offering comfort in the form of prayers and medical interventions that range from harmless to actively dangerous. Yet somehow, in this place where hope seems as scarce as accurate medical knowledge, people occasionally do recover, whether through divine intervention, remarkable personal constitution, or simply outlasting the well-intentioned attempts to cure them. Some patients eventually walk out of plague houses and back into the world of the living. These success stories fuel the continued operation of such establishments, providing just enough hope to justify the continued existence of medieval medicine's most optimistic experiment. Your first night in the plague house stretches ahead like an endless corridor of uncertainty, filled with sounds you can't identify and smells you wish you couldn't. Tomorrow will bring new treatments, new theories about your condition, and new opportunities to survive medieval medicine's unique approach to healthcare. For now, though, you pull your questionable blanket up to your chin, try to ignore the various sounds emanating from your fellow patients, and prepare for what might be the most educational experience in human endurance you'll ever have, assuming, of course, that you live long enough to appreciate the education. The morning light filtering through the oiled parchment windows brings with it your first real encounter with medieval diagnostic medicine, and you quickly discover that everything you thought you knew about how doctors determine what's wrong with you is adorably quaint compared to the scientific rigor of 1348. Brother Thomas approaches your bedside carrying what appears to be a small wooden chest filled with glass vials, star charts, and what looks suspiciously like a collection of colored stones that he consults with the gravity of a modern physician reading an MRI scan. Your medical examination begins not with checking your pulse or temperature concepts that won't become medically relevant for several centuries, but with an intense scrutiny of your urine. Brother Thomas produces a flask called a metula, essentially a glass vessel shaped like a medieval chemistry set reject, and instructs you to provide a sample for what he calls uroscopy. This isn't just a simple urinalysis like you might expect in a modern doctor's office. This is a complete astrological, theological, and chromatic evaluation of your bodily fluids that would make a wine sommelier weep with envy. He holds your urine sample up to the dim light streaming through the window and begins a consultation process that involves comparing the color to a chart that looks like it was designed by someone who'd never seen actual urine but had heard it described by a colorblind friend. The chart itself is a masterpiece of medieval artistic ambition, featuring at least 20 different shades ranging from pale as morning mist to dark as a sinner's soul, each accompanied by elaborate descriptions of their supposed medical significance and spiritual implications. Ah! He murmurs with the confidence of someone who has absolutely no idea what he's looking at, a distinctly citron hue with overtones of sanguine temperament. Notice how it catches the light with just a hint of cloudiness around the edges. This suggests an excess of yellow bile combined with a deficiency of phlegmatic humors, clearly indicating that your spleen is overheated and your liver is producing too much choler while failing to properly cool the blood through adequate phlegmatic intervention. The color analysis continues for what feels like hours as Brother Thomas consults multiple charts, cross-references various medical texts written by authors who had never seen a human dissection, and occasionally holds the flask at different angles to catch the light in ways that apparently reveal hidden diagnostic secrets. He's particularly excited about what he calls sedimentary patterns, basically particles floating in your urine that he interprets like tea leaves, each speck supposedly revealing crucial information about your internal organ function and moral character. See this small cloudy formation near the bottom of the flask? He asks, pointing to what appears to be perfectly normal urine doing what urine naturally does when left standing in a container. This indicates that your kidneys are struggling to filter impurities from both your blood and your soul. The way these particles swirl when I rotate the flask suggests that spiritual corruption is interfering with normal kidney function, probably caused by excessive attachment to worldly possessions or insufficient devotion to prayer. But the urine analysis is just the opening act in your diagnostic adventure. Next comes the astrological consultation, because in medieval medicine, your health is directly connected to the movements of celestial bodies in ways that would make modern astronomers question their career choices and possibly the entire concept of scientific progress. Brother Thomas unfurls a parchment covered with intricate circles, symbols, and what appear to be doodles of various mythological creatures, all designed to determine how the planets were aligned at the moment you first showed symptoms. The astrological chart resembles a cross between a technical diagram and religious art, with concentric circles representing planetary orbits, zodiacal houses, and what Brother Thomas explains are humoral influences radiating from celestial bodies into earthly flesh. Each section of the chart is covered with tiny writing in Latin, interspersed with symbols that look like they were invented by someone having fever dreams about geometry and mythology simultaneously. You mentioned feeling unwell on Tuesday morning, he says, consulting his charts with scholarly intensity that would be impressive if applied to anything resembling actual science. Mars was in conjunction with Saturn while Mercury was retrograde through the house of bodily humors. This clearly indicates that your illness originated from an imbalance of hot and cold principles, exacerbated by the malevolent influence of the planet governing color and blood, while the retrograde motion of Mercury disrupted the normal flow of animal spirits through your nervous system. He traces elaborate patterns on his chart with his finger, occasionally making little sounds that suggest deep medical thinking but probably indicate he's trying to remember which planet is supposed to control which body part. The complexity of the astrological diagnosis is truly impressive. Every major planet apparently has jurisdiction over multiple organs, bodily functions, and personality traits, while the 12 houses of the zodiac each govern different aspects of physical and spiritual health. The concept of planetary influence on human health isn't just casual superstition, it's serious medical science in 1348, taught in universities and practiced by the most learned physicians of the age. Each organ corresponds to a specific celestial body. The sun governs the heart and provides vital heat to the entire system. The moon controls the brain and all cold, moist functions. Mars influences the gallbladder and provides the hot, dry energy necessary for courage and anger. Venus apparently has jurisdiction over the kidneys and reproductive organs. Mercury governs the lungs and nervous system. Jupiter controls the liver and provides temperate, beneficial influences. And Saturn rules the spleen and bones while providing cold, dry, melancholic influences that can either stabilize temperament or cause depression. Your treatment plan will depend not just on your current symptoms, but on predicting how these planetary influences will shift over the coming days and weeks as the celestial bodies continue their eternal dance across the medieval sky. Brother Thomas consults an ephemeris, essentially an astrological calendar that tracks planetary movements to determine the optimal timing for various treatments based on when different planets will be in favorable or unfavorable positions relative to your personal astrological profile. Mars will be moving out of conjunction with Saturn by Thursday. He explains with the confidence of someone making a weather prediction based on divine revelation, which should reduce the hot, dry influences that are causing your blood to overheat. However, Mercury will be entering the house governing lung function on Friday, which could either help clear the phlegmatic congestion in your chest or make it worse, depending on whether Venus provides adequate cooling moisture to balance Mercury's tendency toward hot, rapid movement. Historians still argue whether medieval physicians actually believed in these astrological correlations or simply used them as elaborate placebo treatments to give patients confidence in their care. The evidence suggests that most practitioners genuinely accepted the connection between cosmic events and human health, creating a medical system where your recovery might depend more on planetary movements than on anything happening inside your actual body. The integration of astrology and medicine was so complete that medical schools required extensive training in astronomical observation and calculation alongside traditional studies of anatomy and herbal medicine. Brother Thomas then proceeds to examine your complexion, not for signs of fever or pallor as a modern doctor might, but to determine your fundamental temperament according to the theory of the four humors. Every human being, according to medieval medical wisdom, contains a mixture of four bodily fluids: blood, hot and moist; phlegm, cold and moist; yellow bile or choler, hot and dry; and black bile or melancholy, cold and dry. Your personality, health, appearance, and general life prospects all depend on maintaining the proper balance of these humors, with illness occurring when one humor gains dominance over the others. The examination of your skin color, texture, and temperature provides Brother Thomas with what he considers crucial diagnostic information about your internal humoral balance. He studies your face with the intensity of an art critic examining a Renaissance masterpiece, noting subtle variations in color and texture that supposedly reveal the precise state of your internal fluids. Your skin shows signs of excessive sanguinity, he announces after peering at your face for several minutes. The reddish tint around your cheeks indicates that your blood is too hot and abundant, while the slight dampness of your palms suggests that phlegmatic humors are attempting to cool the system but failing to achieve proper balance. This combination typically results from consuming too much red meat or wine, engaging in excessive physical activity, entertaining overly passionate thoughts, or exposure to hot, moist environmental influences during vulnerable astrological periods. The diagnostic process continues with what Brother Thomas calls pulse reading, though his technique bears no resemblance to modern pulse-taking. Instead of checking your heartbeat's rhythm and speed for signs of cardiovascular problems, he places his fingers at various points on your wrists, neck, and temples while consulting yet another chart that supposedly reveals the character of different pulse types and their correspondence to internal organ function and spiritual conditions. Medieval pulse diagnosis recognizes dozens of different pulse varieties, each with specific names and meanings that sound like they were invented by poets with medical training. According to his findings, your pulse is leaping like a startled deer, which indicates heat and moisture struggling for dominance in the cardiovascular system, while the heart attempts to distribute overabundant sanguine humors throughout the body. Other pulse types he might have detected include creeping like a serpent, indicating cold; dry conditions; fluttering like a butterfly, suggesting nervous system agitation; or pounding like a blacksmith's hammer, revealing dangerous levels of hot, angry humors. Your breathing pattern also receives intense scrutiny, not for signs of respiratory distress, but to determine whether your lungs are properly processing the four types of air that medieval medicine recognizes. There's natural air, which is what you normally breathe from the environment; vital air, which your heart creates by heating and refining natural air; animal air, which your brain produces by further refining vital air into the subtle substance that powers thought and sensation; and supernatural air, which connects your soul to divine influences and enables spiritual experiences. Brother Thomas listens to your chest by placing his ear directly against your rib. Stethoscopes won't be invented for another 5 centuries, and announces that your vital air sounds turbulent and overly warm, suggesting that your heart is working too hard to heat your blood, while failing to properly cool and moderate the sanguine humors through adequate phlegmatic intervention. The quality of your breathing also supposedly reveals whether your lungs are successfully extracting the pure essence from air while filtering out harmful vapors and miasmic influences. The examination of your tongue provides another opportunity for medieval diagnostic creativity that would make modern medicine question everything it thinks it knows about diagnostic techniques. Brother Thomas instructs you to extend your tongue, while he consults a detailed diagram that maps different areas of the tongue to various organs and spiritual conditions, creating what amounts to a medieval tongue reading system that rivals palm reading for elaborate interpretive possibilities. The tip of your tongue apparently corresponds to your heart's moral state and reveals whether you've been entertaining sinful thoughts or maintaining proper spiritual discipline. The middle section reveals the condition of your stomach and liver, indicating how well you're processing both food and the spiritual nourishment that comes from prayer and meditation. The back portion indicates whether your kidneys are properly filtering both physical impurities and spiritual corruption, while the edges supposedly show the state of your spleen and its production of melancholic humors. Your tongue shows a white coating toward the back. He observes with the gravity of someone making a life-or-death diagnosis, indicating that your kidneys are struggling to process not only bodily waste but also the spiritual toxins that accumulate from sinful thoughts, worldly attachments, and insufficient attention to religious devotions. The slight tremor I observe suggests that your nervous system is being disrupted by an overabundance of melancholic humors, probably caused by too much contemplation of worldly matters and insufficient focus on eternal spiritual truths. Medieval medicine also places enormous diagnostic importance on your dreams, because what happens while you sleep supposedly reveals the true state of your internal humoral balance without the interference of conscious thought and daily activities. Brother Thomas questions you extensively about any dreams you can remember from recent nights, interpreting each element according to a complex system that connects dream imagery to bodily functions, spiritual conditions, and planetary influences affecting your sleep. Dreams of flying indicate excess blood making you too hot and light, causing your spirit to attempt escape from your overheated body. Dreams of water suggest phlegmatic dominance, with cold, moist humors creating imagery of rivers, oceans, or rain. Dreams of fire point to yellow bile problems, with hot, dry humors manifesting as flames, deserts, or burning buildings. Dreams of darkness or earth reveal dangerous levels of black bile, indicating that melancholic humors are gaining influence over your imagination and threatening to drag your spirit into despair. You mentioned dreaming about a large black dog, he says, making detailed notes on a piece of parchment with a quill that seems to require constant dipping in ink. Black animals in dreams typically indicate that melancholic humors are gaining dangerous influence over your system, while the canine nature of the creature suggests that these influences are affecting your loyalty and faithfulness both to earthly authorities and to divine commandments. The fact that the dog was large suggests this humoral imbalance is well established and potentially serious, while the dog's behavior in your dream will help determine whether the melancholy is affecting your liver, spleen, or brain functions. The diagnostic process also includes examining your fingernails, hair texture, clarity, and even the way you walk, because medieval medicine recognizes connections between physical appearance and internal health that modern medicine completely ignores or dismisses as superstition. Your fingernails apparently reveal whether your liver is producing bile at the proper rate and temperature, with ridges indicating irregular bile production and discoloration suggesting that toxic humors are being eliminated through the nail beds instead of through proper digestive channels. Your hair texture indicates how well your brain is distributing animal spirits throughout your nervous system, with coarse or brittle hair suggesting that hot, dry humors are interfering with the brain's ability to produce the subtle vapors that power thought and sensation. The clarity of your eyes reveals the purity of your blood and the effectiveness of your heart in distributing vital spirits throughout your body, while the way you walk supposedly indicates whether your skeletal system is receiving adequate nourishment from properly balanced humors. One particularly fascinating aspect of medieval diagnosis involves analyzing your voice quality, not just for signs of respiratory problems, but to determine your spiritual and moral condition based on the theory that speech quality reflects the harmony between body and soul. A raspy voice might indicate excessive pride, causing your throat humors to dry up, while a voice that's too soft could suggest that excessive humility has made your blood too cool and weak to properly power speech. Changes in voice pitch supposedly reveal shifts in humoral balance, with higher voices indicating hot humor dominance and lower voices suggesting cold humor predominance. Brother Thomas listens carefully as you answer his questions, occasionally asking you to repeat certain words or phrases so he can evaluate how different sounds resonate in your chest cavity and throat passages. He's particularly interested in how your voice sounds when pronouncing certain Latin prayers, because the sacred nature of the words supposedly makes any vocal irregularities more apparent and diagnostically significant. The examination concludes with what Brother Thomas calls sympathetic diagnosis, a technique that involves observing how your body responds to various symbolic objects and substances that correspond to different planets, humors, and spiritual influences. This process is based on the medieval belief that all things in creation are connected through invisible correspondences, allowing skilled physicians to diagnose internal conditions by observing external reactions to carefully selected stimuli. He places different colored stones on your chest while watching for changes in your breathing, pulse, or skin color, tests your reaction to various scents by waving herbs under your nose, and even observes how your eyes respond to different types of light from candles made with different materials. Each test supposedly reveals information about your internal state that couldn't be obtained through direct examination. Your pupils dilate more when exposed to candlelight made from beeswax than from tallow. He notes with satisfaction, as if this observation confirms everything he suspected about your condition. This indicates that your brain's animal spirits are still responding properly to pure influences, suggesting that your illness hasn't yet corrupted your higher faculties or interfered with your soul's connection to divine illumination. However, the way your left eye twitches slightly in response to the scent of wormwood suggests that your liver is struggling to process bitter influences, both physical and spiritual, indicating that melancholic humors may be accumulating faster than your natural heat can dissipate them. Throughout this entire diagnostic marathon, which has consumed most of the morning and shows no signs of reaching a conclusion anytime soon, Brother Thomas maintains absolute confidence in his methods and conclusions, regularly referencing the medical authorities whose teachings guide his practice. He quotes extensively from Galen, the ancient Greek physician whose theories about humoral balance form the foundation of medieval medicine, and from various Arabic medical texts that have been translated into Latin with varying degrees of accuracy over the centuries. The integration of classical medical knowledge with Christian theology creates a diagnostic system that's simultaneously sophisticated and completely divorced from anything resembling modern scientific understanding. Every symptom is interpreted not just as a physical problem but as evidence of spiritual condition, moral character, and cosmic influence, creating diagnoses that read like philosophical treatises on the nature of existence rather than medical assessments. The final diagnosis, when it finally comes after what feels like several hours of examination and consultation, is delivered with the ceremonial gravity of a royal proclamation. According to Brother Thomas's comprehensive analysis of your urine, astrological influences, humoral balance, dream patterns, sympathetic responses, and spiritual condition, you are suffering from a tertian fever caused by excessive sanguine humors complicated by melancholic vapors rising from an overheated liver, with secondary phlegmatic accumulations in the lung passages creating obstruction of vital air circulation, all occurring under the malevolent influence of Mars, ascending through Saturn's house, while Mercury fails to provide proper cooling influences to the brain's rational faculties, further complicated by spiritual toxins resulting from insufficient prayer and excessive attachment to worldly concerns. In other words, you have the plague, but explained in a way that makes it sound like your body is hosting an incredibly complex medieval chemistry experiment gone wrong, with planets serving as unwanted lab assistants and your organs conducting negotiations that would challenge experienced diplomats. The diagnosis also includes a detailed prognosis based on upcoming planetary movements, seasonal changes, and your potential for spiritual improvement through proper treatment and religious devotion. Tomorrow, Brother Thomas assures you with the confidence of someone whose medical training consisted entirely of reading books written by people who had never seen a human dissection. Treatment will begin in earnest, designed specifically to address each component of your remarkably detailed and completely inaccurate diagnosis. Whether you'll survive these treatments is a question that medieval medicine approaches with optimism that would be admirable if it weren't so potentially fatal. Dawn breaks over your plague house with all the gentle promise of a medieval torture session, and you quickly discover that Brother Thomas's treatment philosophy operates on the principle that if something isn't actively trying to kill you, it's probably not medicine. Your therapeutic journey begins with what he cheerfully calls aggressive humoral rebalancing, which sounds almost scientific until you realize it involves deliberately poisoning yourself with substances that would make a modern hazmat team evacuate the building. The first treatment on your morning agenda is bloodletting, because nothing says healing quite like voluntarily losing significant quantities of the fluid that keeps you alive. Brother Thomas approaches your bedside carrying a leather case that opens to reveal an array of tools that look like they were designed by someone who confused medical instruments with medieval torture devices. There are lancets for making precise cuts, fleams that resemble tiny axes designed for opening veins, and what appears to be a small cup made from an animal horn that he explains will help draw out the corrupted blood. The excessive sanguine humors revealed in yesterday's diagnosis must be reduced immediately, he announces with the confidence of someone who has never heard of blood pressure, circulation, or the concept that blood might actually be important for survival. Your fever indicates that hot, corrupt blood is overwhelming your system's natural cooling mechanisms, so we'll need to remove approximately 2 pints to restore proper humoral balance. 2 pints, by the way, represents roughly 20% of your total blood volume, which in modern medicine would be considered a medical emergency requiring immediate transfusion. In medieval medicine, it's considered a light therapeutic session that might need to be repeated daily until you show signs of improvement or until you're too weak to complain about the treatment, whichever comes first. The bloodletting process begins with Brother Thomas consulting yet another chart to determine the optimal location for making incisions based on your astrological sign, the current phase of the moon, and the specific humors he's trying to eliminate. Different body parts apparently correspond to different humoral influences, so bleeding from your arm will remove different types of corrupted blood than bleeding from your temple or ankle. Mars governs your head and face, he explains while sharpening a lancet that looks suspiciously like a miniature sword. So we'll begin with temporal bleeding to reduce the hot, choleric humors that are causing your fever and headaches. Then we'll move to the basilic vein in your left arm, which corresponds to Venus and will help eliminate excessive sanguine humors without disrupting the cold, moist influences we need to preserve for proper healing. The actual bloodletting experience is exactly as unpleasant as you'd expect from a medical procedure that involves deliberately cutting yourself open with medieval tools that may or may not have been cleaned since their last use. Brother Thomas makes a series of small incisions in your temple while you try to maintain consciousness and wonder whether the plague might actually be preferable to the cure. The blood flows into a bowl while he monitors the color and consistency, looking for changes that supposedly indicate when different types of corrupted humors have been successfully eliminated. Excellent, he says with satisfaction as you feel yourself growing dizzy from blood loss. The blood is becoming lighter and less viscous, indicating that we're successfully removing the hot, thick humors that were causing your system to overheat. We'll continue until we see the pale, thin blood that indicates proper sanguine balance has been restored. But bloodletting is just the opening act in your medieval medical adventure. Next comes cupping, a procedure that involves creating suction on your skin using heated cups to draw out what Brother Thomas describes as corrupt vapors and stagnant humors that have accumulated in your flesh. The cups themselves are made from animal horns or carved wood, and the suction is created by heating them with burning cloth before placing them on your skin. The sensation of cupping feels like being attacked by a series of aggressive vacuum cleaners operated by someone who learned their technique from watching octopi hunt prey. The suction pulls your skin up into the cups, creating painful welts that Brother Thomas examines with scholarly interest, interpreting the patterns of bruising as diagnostic information about your internal condition. The dark marks appearing under the cups indicate that we're successfully drawing out melancholic vapors that have been trapped in your flesh. He explains while applying more cups to various parts of your body. The circular bruising pattern suggests that your skin is responding properly to the treatment, while the slight bleeding under some cups shows that corrupted blood is being pulled to the surface where it can be safely eliminated. Historians still argue whether cupping provided any actual medical benefits or simply created impressive-looking injuries that made patients feel like they were receiving aggressive treatment. The practice was so widespread in medieval medicine that specialized cupping sets were passed down as valuable family heirlooms, and skilled cuppers were considered essential medical specialists whose techniques could mean the difference between recovery and death. After your cupping session leaves you looking like you've been attacked by a giant octopus with anger management issues, Brother Thomas moves on to what he calls purgative therapy, designed to eliminate corrupted humors through your digestive system. This involves consuming a series of substances that would make modern poison control centers declare a national emergency, all carefully selected for their ability to cause violent purging from both ends of your digestive tract. The first purgative is a concoction made from aloes, rhubarb, and what Brother Thomas mysteriously refers to as dragon's blood, which turns out to be a red resin that tastes exactly like you'd expect something called dragon's blood to taste horrible beyond description. The mixture has the consistency of liquid regret and a flavor profile that suggests someone tried to create medicine by dissolving old leather in vinegar and adding a dash of concentrated despair. This will help eliminate the corrupted yellow bile that's contributing to your fever, Brother Thomas explains, as you struggle not to vomit immediately after consuming the horrible mixture. The violent purging action will force your liver to release accumulated toxins while stimulating your intestines to expel any melancholic humors that have settled in your digestive system. You should begin experiencing results within the hour. Results turns out to be medieval medical terminology for explosive diarrhea combined with projectile vomiting, creating what amounts to a biological reenactment of medieval siege warfare conducted entirely within your digestive system. The purgative works with an efficiency that would be impressive if it weren't so utterly miserable, leaving you weak, dehydrated, and questioning every life choice that led you to seek medieval medical care. But Brother Thomas isn't finished with your purgative education. The next mixture contains mercury, which medieval medicine considers an excellent treatment for various conditions despite the minor side effect of slowly poisoning you to death. The mercury is combined with honey and various herbs in an attempt to make it palatable, though palatable is a relative term when applied to substances that modern medicine classifies as hazardous waste. Mercury has the unique property of being both hot and cold, wet and dry. Brother Thomas explains with the confidence of someone who has never heard of mercury poisoning, making it ideal for treating complex humoral imbalances where multiple conflicting influences need to be addressed simultaneously. The liquid metal will circulate through your system, binding with corrupted humors and carrying them out of your body through natural elimination processes. The mercury treatment produces a range of side effects that Brother Thomas interprets as positive signs of healing. Excessive salivation indicates that your mouth is purging corrupted phlegm. Muscle tremors suggest that your nervous system is responding to treatment. And the metallic taste that seems to coat your entire mouth for days is supposedly evidence that the mercury is successfully binding with toxins throughout your system. Your therapeutic adventure continues with what medieval medicine calls sweating therapy, designed to eliminate corrupted humors through your skin pores. This involves being wrapped in multiple layers of heavy woolen blankets and placed near a fire while consuming hot liquids designed to raise your body temperature to levels that would make a modern physician check you into intensive care. The sweating process begins with Brother Thomas preparing a special drink made from wine mixed with various spices that supposedly have heating properties. Cinnamon, ginger, cloves, and what he calls grains of paradise are combined with strong wine to create a mixture that burns going down and continues burning long after you've consumed it. The alcohol content alone would be concerning under normal circumstances, but combined with your weakened condition from bloodletting and purging, it quickly produces effects that range from dizzy to completely incoherent. The profuse sweating indicates that your pores are opening to release the corrupt vapors that have been trapped beneath your skin. Brother Thomas observes as you lie wrapped in blankets, sweating like a medieval sauna enthusiast who's lost all sense of proportion. The fact that your sweat smells different from normal perspiration shows that toxins are being successfully eliminated through cutaneous purging. The sweating continues for hours while Brother Thomas monitors your condition by periodically checking your pulse, examining your sweat for color and consistency, and asking you questions designed to test whether your brain is still functioning properly despite being slowly cooked inside your own skull. The combination of heat, alcohol, and previous treatments creates a state that could charitably be described as altered consciousness, but more accurately resembles gradually approaching death through systematic dehydration. Medieval sweating therapy also includes the application of various ointments and poultices designed to draw out specific types of corrupted humors through different areas of your skin. A mustard-based paste applied to your chest supposedly helps eliminate phlegmatic humors from your lungs, while a mixture containing sulfur and various ground insects applied to your forehead is designed to draw out melancholic vapors that might be affecting your brain function. The mustard poultice creates a burning sensation that makes you wonder whether spontaneous human combustion might actually be a real medical phenomenon, while the insect-based mixture on your forehead produces a tingling sensation that Brother Thomas assures you is evidence of successful treatment rather than an allergic reaction to having dead beetles rubbed into your skin. But Brother Thomas isn't content with treating just your internal humoral balance. He also believes in addressing what he calls external influences that might be contributing to your condition. This leads to one of medieval medicine's most creative treatments, the application of live animals to various parts of your body, based on the theory that healthy animals can absorb corrupted humors and carry them away from your system. The first animal therapy involves placing a live pigeon against your chest, supposedly to draw out corrupted air from your lungs. The pigeon, understandably, is not enthusiastic about this therapeutic role and expresses its displeasure through a combination of frantic struggling and what can only be described as indignant squawking. Brother Thomas holds the bird in place while explaining that the pigeon's natural heat and vital spirits will attract the cold, corrupt vapors from your respiratory system. When the pigeon becomes ill or dies, we'll know that it has successfully absorbed the poisonous influences from your lungs. He explains while the increasingly agitated bird attempts to escape its medical duties. This is one of nature's most reliable methods for transferring disease from human patients to animal carriers who can better tolerate the corrupt influences. The pigeon therapy is followed by the application of various other creatures selected for their supposed ability to absorb specific types of humoral corruption. A small snake placed on your forehead is designed to draw out melancholic vapors from your brain, while a live fish held against your stomach supposedly helps balance the hot, dry influences that are disrupting your digestive system. Each animal reacts to its therapeutic role with varying degrees of cooperation, creating what amounts to a medical menagerie where you serve as the unwilling centerpiece in a bizarre medieval petting zoo designed by someone who confused veterinary medicine with human treatment. The snakes writhe uncomfortably, the fish flop desperately, and you begin to wonder whether the animals might actually be the lucky ones in this therapeutic arrangement. The final treatment in your morning medical marathon involves what Brother Thomas calls sympathetic mineral therapy, based on the medieval belief that certain stones and metals can influence humoral balance through their natural properties and correspondence to planetary influences. This involves placing various minerals on different parts of your body while you lie still and try to ignore the fact that you're being treated like a human geology exhibition. A piece of iron placed on your chest supposedly provides martial energy to help your heart fight off the corrupted influences, weakening your vital spirits. A copper disc on your forehead corresponds to Venus and helps cool the excessive heat that's causing your fever. Various semi-precious stones are arranged around your body according to their astrological correspondences, creating what Brother Thomas describes as a sympathetic energy matrix, designed to harmonize your internal humoral balance with beneficial cosmic influences. The stones will gradually absorb the corrupt influences from your system while radiating their natural healing properties into your flesh. He explains with the confidence of someone who has never heard of the placebo effect but has stumbled onto something that occasionally works through pure coincidence. As your humors return to proper balance, you'll notice that the stones feel heavier, indicating that they're successfully drawing out the toxic substances that were disrupting your health. By midday, after enduring bloodletting, cupping, mercury poisoning, controlled hyperthermia, live animal therapy, and mineral treatment, you're left wondering whether the plague might actually represent the less dangerous option in your current medical situation. Brother Thomas, however, is entirely satisfied with your morning's progress and assures you that the afternoon will bring even more intensive treatments designed to complete your humoral rebalancing and restore you to perfect health, assuming, of course, that perfect health is still achievable after surviving medieval medicine's most enthusiastic therapeutic interventions. The afternoon sun filters through your plague house windows with all the cheerful warmth of a medieval funeral pyre, illuminating what has become your extended family of fellow sufferers in this testament to human endurance and medical optimism. As your eyes adjust to the shifting light patterns dancing across the straw-covered floor, you begin to truly appreciate the diverse collection of humanity that fate, poor hygiene, and questionable medical decisions have assembled under this sagging roof. Your closest neighbor is Master Willem, a wool merchant whose condition represents what Brother Thomas optimistically calls advanced humoral complexity. Willem's symptoms include the classic bubonic swellings in his neck and armpits, those charming little lumps called buboes that give the plague its cheerful nickname. But his case is complicated by what appears to be a secondary infection that has turned his fingertips an alarming shade of black. Medieval medicine explains this as corrupted blood seeking escape through the extremities, though Willem prefers to describe it as my fingers apparently declaring independence from the rest of my body. Willem spends most of his time muttering calculations related to his wool business, occasionally interrupting his delirium to announce commodity prices from markets that may or may not exist anymore. Flemish wool, 2 shillings per pound. He declares with the authority of someone conducting serious business negotiations, despite being wrapped in blankets that smell like they were woven from the collective despair of previous patients. His merchant instincts remain sharp enough to negotiate with Brother Thomas over the quality of his medical treatments, attempting to barter for premium bloodletting services in exchange for imaginary shipments of high-grade fleece. On your other side lies Dame Marguerite, a baker's wife whose symptoms have taken what Brother Thomas describes as an exceptionally creative turn. In addition to the standard fever and swellings, she's developed what medieval medicine calls dancing sickness, uncontrollable muscle spasms that make her limbs jerk and twitch in patterns that would be rhythmic if they weren't so obviously involuntary. Brother Thomas attributes this to excessive sanguine humors creating heat in the brain, though Marguerite insists that she's simply practicing for the village harvest dance that she's certain she'll be well enough to attend. Her dancing episodes occur with predictable regularity, usually coinciding with Brother Thomas's rounds, creating what amounts to an involuntary medical performance that the good monk interprets as either promising signs of recovery or evidence that her treatment needs to become more aggressive. The other patients have learned to time their conversations around Marguerite's spasms, creating a rhythm to daily life that's part medical routine and part interpretive dance festival. Across the room, young Tom, the apprentice blacksmith, presents a case study in what happens when bubonic plague meets the medieval immune system of someone whose primary qualifications for survival include youth, stupidity, and an apparently indestructible constitution. Tom's symptoms come and go with the regularity of seasonal weather, leading Brother Thomas to diagnose him with intermittent humoral fluctuations caused by the vigorous animal spirits typical of adolescent males. Tom's buboes swell and recede like some sort of biological tide. His fever spikes and breaks with clockwork precision, and his appetite remains so robust that he's actually gained weight since arriving at the plague house. This medical anomaly has made him Brother Thomas's favorite patient and everyone else's least favorite dining companion, as he cheerfully consumes double portions while the rest of you struggle to keep down thin gruel without vomiting. It's the blacksmith work, Tom explains with the confidence of someone whose medical theory is based entirely on professional experience. All that hammering and fire work, it makes your humor stronger. My master always said that smiths don't get sick like regular folk because our blood gets tempered like good steel. Brother Thomas finds this theory fascinating and has begun incorporating metallurgical metaphors into his treatment plans, much to everyone's confusion and mild terror. In the corner bed nearest the door lies Father Benedict, a traveling monk whose condition has taken what can only be described as a philosophical turn. His plague symptoms are conventional enough fever, swellings, the usual medieval medical adventure, but he's developed what he calls spiritual clarity that manifests as extended theological discussions with invisible participants. These conversations range from debates about transubstantiation with what appears to be St. Augustine to heated arguments about predestination with someone he addresses as "you stubborn Pelagian heretic." Father Benedict's theological discussions provide a constant soundtrack to daily life in the plague house, creating what amounts to a one-man religious conference that covers topics from the nature of divine providence to the proper method for blessing plague victims. Brother Thomas finds these episodes either deeply inspiring or evidence of dangerous melancholic vapors affecting the brain, depending on whether Father Benedict's invisible conversation partners agree with established church doctrine. The plague is clearly a test of faith, Father Benedict announces during his lucid moments, designed to separate the wheat from the chaff in preparation for the final judgment. Those who maintain proper spiritual discipline will recover, while those who succumb to despair or worldly attachment will naturally be called home to face divine justice. This theory makes him remarkably cheerful about everyone's prospects for survival, though his definition of proper spiritual discipline seems to include extended periods of delirious preaching that exhaust everyone within earshot. Near the window, Lady Constance represents what happens when medieval medicine encounters aristocratic expectations and unlimited financial resources. Her plague symptoms are identical to everyone else's, but her treatment regimen has been customized to reflect her social status and ability to pay premium prices for premium medical care. While the rest of you receive standard bloodletting with ordinary lancets, Lady Constance gets therapeutic bleeding with silver instruments that supposedly provide superior humoral balancing through their correspondence to lunar influences. Her diet consists of what Brother Thomas calls noble foods, designed specifically for aristocratic constitutions: white bread instead of brown, wine instead of ale, and meat from animals that were supposedly fed on herbs selected for their beneficial humoral properties. Whether these dietary modifications provide actual medical benefits is debatable, but they definitely make the rest of you more acutely aware of your peasant quality gruel and the democratic nature of medieval plague symptoms. Lady Constance spends most of her time composing what she calls death poetry, in case her condition takes a turn for the worse, creating verses that combine courtly romance conventions with bubonic plague imagery in ways that would make a modern poet question their career choices. My swollen glands like roses bloom, she recites with artistic satisfaction, beneath my fevered lover's moon. The aesthetic results are mixed, but her commitment to maintaining cultural standards during medical crisis is genuinely admirable. The most mysterious resident of your plague house is Master Aldrich, whose background remains unclear but whose symptoms have evolved in ways that challenge even Brother Thomas's extensive theoretical knowledge. Aldrich claims to be a traveling scholar, though his area of expertise seems to shift depending on his fever levels and the phase of the moon. During lucid periods, He demonstrates knowledge of astronomy, natural philosophy, and what appears to be rudimentary chemistry. During fever spikes, he speaks in what sounds like several different languages, none of which Brother Thomas recognizes. The corruption spreads through sympathetic resonance. Aldrich explains during one of his more coherent moments, following the natural correspondences that connect all earthly substances to their celestial influences. The disease seeks out weakness in the humoral matrix, exploiting imbalances that already existed before the pestilence arrived. His medical theories are sophisticated enough to impress Brother Thomas while being completely incomprehensible to everyone else. Aldrich's treatment response has been unlike anyone else's. Symptoms seem to shift and change, as if the plague is experimenting with different approaches to his particular constitution. Brother Thomas finds this medically fascinating and has begun using Aldrich as a test case for various experimental treatments that combine traditional humoral theory with what he calls advanced sympathetic medicine. Near the back of the room, Goodwife Martha represents the practical, no-nonsense approach to surviving medieval medical care through sheer stubborn determination and agricultural wisdom. As a farmer's wife, she's accustomed to dealing with sick animals, crop failures, and the general hostility of medieval rural life, giving her a perspective on plague house conditions that's remarkably pragmatic. It's like lambing season, she explains with characteristic directness, except instead of sheep, as people, and instead of helping them give birth, we're trying to keep them from dying. Same principles apply: keep them warm, keep them fed, and don't let the weak ones give up hope. Her medical philosophy may lack theological sophistication, but her survival instincts are remarkably sound. Martha has appointed herself unofficial supervisor of practical matters like food distribution, blanket allocation, and making sure everyone gets their turn at the chamber pot without unnecessary drama. Her organizational skills have transformed what could have been complete chaos into something resembling functional community living, despite the challenging circumstances and Brother Thomas's occasionally counterproductive therapeutic interventions. Historians still argue whether the social dynamics of medieval plague houses represented genuine community formation or simply desperate people making the best of terrible circumstances. The evidence suggests both shared suffering created bonds between people who would never have interacted under normal circumstances, while the constant presence of death made everyone acutely aware of their fundamental human equality regardless of social status or professional background. Your daily routine with these fellow sufferers follows patterns that would be comfortingly predictable if they weren't so consistently unpleasant. Morning begins with Brother Thomas's rounds, during which he examines everyone's condition, adjusts treatment plans, and offers spiritual guidance that ranges from genuinely comforting to completely delusional, depending on his assessment of each patient's prospects for survival. The medical examinations provide entertainment for everyone not currently being examined, as Brother Thomas's diagnostic techniques often involve procedures that are either fascinating or horrifying depending on your perspective. Watching him analyze someone else's urine colors or interpret their dream symbolism creates a shared experience that bonds the group while making everyone grateful that they're not currently receiving personal attention from medieval medicine's finest practitioner. Mealtimes become social events where everyone compares symptoms, shares theories about treatment effectiveness, and engages in the sort of gallows humor that emerges naturally when groups of people face potentially fatal circumstances together. The food itself may be barely edible, but the conversation ranges from philosophical discussions about the nature of suffering to practical advice about managing various plague symptoms with dignity and minimal disruption to sleeping arrangements. The trick to keeping your buboes from chafing, Willem advises with the authority of extensive personal experience, is to position yourself so they don't rub against the straw when you roll over. Also, don't roll over unless absolutely necessary. This type of practical medical advice never appears in Brother Thomas's learned texts, but proves invaluable for maintaining basic comfort during extended plague house residency. Evening brings what amounts to medieval group therapy, as everyone shares their fears, hopes, and increasingly creative theories about their medical conditions. Lady Constance recites her latest death poetry. Father Benedict offers theological commentary on everyone's spiritual prospects, and Tom regales the group with stories about blacksmith work that somehow always conclude with explanations of why his constitution is superior to everyone else's. The conversations often turn to speculation about the outside world and what's happening beyond the plague house walls. News filters in occasionally through Brother Thomas's contacts or visitors who bring supplies, but most information arrives garbled by fear, superstition, and the natural tendency of medieval news reporting to prioritize dramatic impact over factual accuracy. They say the king has fled to Scotland, reports Martha with the confidence of someone repeating third-hand gossip, and that London is completely empty except for the dead and the rats. Whether any of these reports are accurate is impossible to determine, but they provide endless material for discussion and speculation about post-plague life for those optimistic enough to believe they'll survive to see it. The social hierarchy within your plague house reflects medieval society in miniature, but with the interesting twist that shared suffering and mutual dependence have created relationships that transcend normal class boundaries. Lady Constance seeks farming advice from Martha, Willem discusses theology with Father Benedict, and even mysterious Aldrich contributes practical suggestions for managing group living arrangements. This temporary suspension of normal social rules creates what anthropologists might recognize as a liminal space where ordinary social conventions are temporarily set aside in favor of survival-focused cooperation. The result is a community that's simultaneously more egalitarian and more intensely personal than anything most medieval people would experience in their normal lives. As darkness falls and the candles are lit for another night in your medieval medical adventure, you settle into your straw bedding, surrounded by the familiar sounds of your temporary family. Willem's muttered business calculations, Marguerite's occasional involuntary dancing, Tom's cheerful snoring, Father Benedict's whispered prayers, Lady Constance's poetic compositions, Aldrich's mysterious multilingual fever dreams, and Martha's practical commentary on everyone else's nighttime habits. Tomorrow will bring new treatments, new symptoms, and new opportunities to discover just how creative medieval medicine can become when applied with enough enthusiasm and complete disregard for modern concepts like evidence-based practice or first do no harm. Tonight, though, you're part of a community that exists nowhere else in medieval society, a group of equals united by shared circumstances, mutual dependence, and the increasingly slim hope that Brother Thomas's medical theories might occasionally align with reality closely enough to keep everyone alive until morning. Morning arrives in your plague house with the subtle grace of a medieval siege engine, and with it comes the delightful prospect of what Brother Thomas optimistically calls therapeutic nutrition, and what you quickly learn to think of as edible punishment designed by people who confused food preparation with experimental torture. The concept of medical diet in 1348 operates on principles that would make a modern nutritionist weep openly, combining humoral theory with cooking techniques that seem designed to eliminate any possibility of actual nourishment while maximizing opportunities for digestive distress. Your breakfast consists of what Brother Thomas proudly presents as humoral balancing gruel, a substance that manages to be simultaneously watery and lumpy while possessing a color that doesn't occur anywhere in nature. The primary ingredient appears to be barley that has been cooked until it surrenders all structural integrity and personal dignity, then combined with what he calls medicinal herbs that taste exactly like someone tried to create flavor by grinding up old leather and mixing it with concentrated regret. This morning's preparation has been specifically designed to cool your overheated sanguine humors while providing gentle nourishment to your weakened digestive system. Brother Thomas explains with the confidence of someone who has never actually eaten his own medical prescriptions. The barley provides cold, moist influences to counteract the hot, dry conditions causing your fever, while the herbs wormwood, rue, and blessed thistle will help purge any remaining corrupt humors from your stomach and liver. The wormwood, you quickly discover, has a flavor profile that suggests it was named by someone with a particularly twisted sense of humor and an intimate knowledge of what actual worms might taste like if they were somehow made more bitter and less appealing. The rue adds what can only be described as aggressive unpleasantness. While the blessed thistle apparently earned its sacred designation through its remarkable ability to make you question whether dying might actually be preferable to finishing breakfast. Medieval medical theory holds that food should be selected based on its humoral properties rather than trivial considerations like taste, nutritional content, or whether it's likely to cause immediate vomiting. Every ingredient has been classified according to whether it's hot or cold, wet or dry, and your therapeutic diet consists entirely of substances chosen to counteract whatever humoral imbalances Brother Thomas believes are causing your symptoms. Hot conditions require cooling foods. He explains while ladling another serving of gruel that somehow manages to be both lukewarm and revolting, while cold conditions need warming influences. Your particular combination of fever and swellings indicates excessive heat and moisture, so we'll focus on foods that are cold and dry until your humoral balance returns to normal proportions. This therapeutic approach means that everything remotely pleasant or appetizing is strictly forbidden as potentially dangerous to your recovery. No meat, because it's hot. Moist properties might increase your fever. No wine, despite its recognized medicinal benefits, because alcohol could interfere with the cooling influences you need. No bread made from wheat, because wheat is considered too hot for your current condition. Even water must be carefully regulated, because too much moisture could worsen the phlegmatic accumulations that Brother Thomas believes are complicating your case. Instead, your daily menu consists of what medieval medicine considers the safest possible foods for someone in your condition. Barley prepared in various forms that all taste essentially the same, vegetables that have been selected primarily for their ability to resist any hint of flavor, and liquids that combine the worst aspects of medicine and beverage into single substances that challenge your commitment to staying alive. The vegetables in your therapeutic diet include turnips, which apparently possess cooling properties that make them ideal for reducing fever, though their primary effect seems to be making you wonder whether starvation might be a more dignified approach to illness. Cabbage provides what Brother Thomas describes as cold, moist influences that help balance excessive heat, though its medicinal benefits are somewhat offset by its tendency to create digestive complications that add new dimensions of discomfort to your plague house experience. Leeks feature prominently in your therapeutic menu because they supposedly combine cooling properties with gentle cleansing action that helps eliminate corrupt humors without overstimulating your already delicate digestive system. The leeks are prepared by boiling them until they achieve the consistency of medieval wallpaper paste, then seasoning them with herbs chosen specifically for their medicinal properties rather than any consideration of whether they make the leeks more palatable. These particular leeks have been harvested according to lunar influences. Brother Thomas explains with scholarly enthusiasm, picked during the waning moon when they're cold. Moist properties are at maximum strength. Combined with fennel and dill, both cold herbs that aid digestion while cooling internal heat, they create a dish that's both therapeutically effective and nutritionally appropriate for your current humoral state. The result tastes exactly like what you'd expect from vegetables that were selected by astronomical calculation and prepared according to medieval medical theory rather than any recognition that food is supposed to provide nourishment and perhaps even minimal pleasure. The fennel adds a licorice-like flavor that clashes spectacularly with everything else, while the dill contributes an herbal bitterness that makes you appreciate the subtle flavors of wormwood by comparison. Breakfast also includes what Brother Thomas calls therapeutic ale, which sounds promising until you discover that it's been specifically brewed to eliminate most of the properties that make ale enjoyable. The alcohol content has been reduced to homeopathic levels. The flavor has been adjusted through the addition of medicinal herbs, and the result is a liquid that combines the worst aspects of weak beer and herbal medicine into something that makes you nostalgic for the simple honesty of plain water. Regular ale would be too heating for your condition. Brother Thomas explains while pouring a wooden cup of liquid that looks like it was strained through questionable cloth. So this has been prepared with cooling herbs and a reduced fermentation time to minimize its hot, dry influences. The addition of meadowsweet and willow bark provides gentle pain relief while maintaining the cold, moist properties necessary for your recovery. The therapeutic ale has a flavor that suggests someone tried to create a beverage by soaking old socks in water that had been used to clean medieval medical instruments, then adding just enough fermentation to create the illusion that it might once have been related to actual ale. The meadowsweet contributes a medicinal sweetness that clashes with everything else, while the willow bark adds a bitter aftertaste that lingers long after you've finished drinking and makes you wonder whether your taste buds will ever recover from this educational experience. Lunch brings new opportunities to explore medieval culinary medicine through what Brother Thomas presents as strengthening broths designed to restore vital spirits while maintaining proper humoral balance. The broth appears to have been created by boiling various bones and vegetables until they surrender all nutritional value and personal identity, then seasoning the result with herbs selected according to astrological calculations rather than culinary wisdom. The base of the broth consists of bones from animals that Brother Thomas assures you were healthy specimens, though their health appears to have been entirely spiritual rather than physical, as the resulting liquid has a grayish color and an aroma that suggests the animals in question died of disappointment. The vegetables contributing to this therapeutic marvel include more turnips, because apparently turnips are medieval medicine's answer to every nutritional challenge, along with parsnips that have been cooked until they achieve the consistency of theological arguments and about the same level of appeal. This broth provides gentle nourishment without overstimulating your digestive system. Brother Thomas explains while serving liquid that looks like it was strained through medieval laundry, while the herbs sage, thyme, and marjoram contribute warming influences to balance the cooling effects of the vegetables. The long cooking time ensures that all nutrients have been properly extracted and made easily digestible for your weakened condition. Historians still argue whether medieval medical diets provided adequate nutrition or simply represented elaborate methods of slow starvation disguised as therapeutic intervention. The evidence suggests that patients often recovered despite their medical diets rather than because of them, with survival depending more on individual constitution and sheer stubborn determination than on the nutritional wisdom of medieval dietary theory. The broth is accompanied by what Brother Thomas calls digestive bread, made from barley flour because wheat is still considered too heating for your condition. The bread has the texture of compressed sawdust and a flavor that suggests the barley was ground by people who had never encountered the concept of making food appealing, then baked by someone whose experience with ovens was limited to watching buildings burn down during sieges. Barley bread provides cold, dry nourishment that counteracts the hot, moist humors causing your fever. Brother Thomas explains while breaking off pieces of what appears to be edible masonry, while its dense texture ensures that you receive maximum nutritional benefit from minimal quantities. The addition of ground herbs, primarily wormwood and rue, provides additional medicinal benefits while aiding digestion of the grain. The digestive bread manages to be simultaneously dry enough to absorb all moisture from your mouth while being dense enough to serve as construction material for small medieval fortifications. Chewing it requires sustained effort that exercises muscles you didn't know existed, while swallowing it becomes an act of faith that your digestive system will somehow manage to process what appears to be compressed medieval building materials seasoned with substances that were never meant for human consumption. The afternoon brings what Brother Thomas optimistically calls restorative refreshment, in the form of drinks designed to provide hydration while delivering medicinal benefits through carefully selected ingredients. The primary beverage is what he terms cooling tisane, made by steeping various herbs in water that has been boiled according to astrological timing and cooled to room temperature to maximize its therapeutic properties. The tisane contains chamomile, which provides calming influences that supposedly help reduce fever while promoting restful sleep. Mint contributes cooling properties that aid digestion while providing what Brother Thomas describes as gentle stimulation of the vital spirits. Lemon balm adds what he calls solar influences, that help balance the lunar cooling effects of the other ingredients, creating what amounts to an astrological balancing act performed in liquid form. This particular combination has been prepared according to your individual humoral needs. Brother Thomas explains while serving liquid that tastes like someone tried to create a beverage by soaking various garden weeds in lukewarm water. With the herbs selected based on your astrological chart and current symptom patterns, the chamomile addresses your excessive heat. The mint counteracts digestive disruption caused by previous treatments, and the lemon balm provides gentle warming to prevent overcooling of your system. The tisane has a flavor that starts out merely unpleasant and develops complex notes of medicinal bitterness as you continue drinking, creating what amounts to a liquid education in why medieval people might have preferred ale to water-based beverages. The chamomile contributes a floral quality that clashes with everything else, while the mint provides a cooling sensation that would be refreshing if it weren't combined with herbs that taste like they were selected by someone who confused medicine with punishment. Evening brings the day's final nutritional challenge in the form of what Brother Thomas calls night foods, designed to promote restful sleep while continuing the process of humoral rebalancing that supposedly represents the key to your recovery. The primary dish is a porridge made from oats that have been cooked with milk that smells like it came from cows with questionable health and possibly serious personal problems. Oat porridge provides gentle, cold nourishment that helps cool the system while promoting sleep. Brother Thomas explains while serving what appears to be liquid cardboard with a slight dairy fragrance, while the milk adds moistening influences that counteract the drying effects of fever and previous purgative treatments. The addition of honey provides solar warmth to prevent excessive cooling during the night hours. The oat porridge has achieved a consistency that falls somewhere between liquid and solid while managing to be less appealing than either state would suggest. The oats have been cooked until they lose all structural integrity and most of their will to exist, while the milk contributes a sourness that suggests it began turning before it reached the cooking pot. The honey, supposedly providing solar warmth, mainly adds sweetness that makes all the other flavors more noticeable without making them any more pleasant. The evening meal also includes what Brother Thomas calls sleep-inducing wine, which turns out to be regular wine that has been diluted with water and infused with herbs supposed to promote restful sleep. The herbs include valerian, which adds an earthy flavor that suggests someone tried to create a beverage by soaking dirty socks in wine, and poppy seeds, which contribute a nutty flavor that would be pleasant if it weren't overwhelmed by everything else happening in this liquid mistake. This preparation will help ensure peaceful sleep while continuing the cooling and moistening influences your system needs for proper recovery. Brother Thomas explains while serving wine that has been transformed from a potentially pleasant beverage into something that makes you understand why some people choose to remain conscious despite their medical conditions. The valerian calms agitated spirits while the poppy seeds provide gentle pain relief that won't interfere with the natural healing processes occurring during sleep. Your daily nutritional routine in the plague house represents medieval medicine's earnest attempt to heal through dietary modification, based on theories that are simultaneously sophisticated and completely wrong about how human bodies actually process food and recover from illness. Every meal becomes an exercise in endurance that tests your commitment to survival while providing minimal actual nourishment and maximum opportunities to reconsider whether dying might be simpler than continuing to eat therapeutic food, prepared by people who clearly confused medicine with creative punishment. Yet somehow, despite the best efforts of medieval dietary theory to eliminate anything resembling pleasure or adequate nutrition from your daily meals, your body continues to function and even occasionally shows signs of recovering from your plague symptoms. Whether this represents the effectiveness of humoral balancing through carefully selected foods or simply the remarkable ability of the human digestive system to extract nutrients from even the most unpromising culinary experiments remains a question that medieval medicine approaches with confidence that would be admirable if it weren't so potentially dangerous to your long-term survival and definitely your immediate dining pleasure. Darkness settles over your plague house like a medieval blanket woven from equal parts despair and questionable hygiene, and you quickly discover that nighttime in a 14th century medical facility transforms an already challenging situation into something that would make modern horror writers question their career choices. The sounds that emerge after sunset create what can only be described as a symphony of human suffering performed by people who never auditioned for their roles and definitely didn't read the program notes before the performance began. The evening shift brings new staff members whose qualifications for nighttime medical care appear to consist primarily of willingness to work in darkness surrounded by potentially contagious people, combined with what might charitably be called optimism but more accurately resembles complete detachment from reality. Sister Agatha arrives as the sun disappears, carrying a bundle of candles that provide just enough light to make the shadows more terrifying, while failing to adequately illuminate anything actually useful, like where you're supposed to put the chamber pot or whether that dark stain on the wall is old blood or just medieval interior decorating. Sister Agatha's approach to nighttime patient care operates on the principle that sleeping people are generally less trouble than conscious ones, so her primary medical strategy involves encouraging everyone to remain as unconscious as possible for as long as possible. This sounds reasonable until you realize that her methods for promoting sleep include administering what she calls night drafts, made from combinations of herbs that would concern modern pharmacologists and definitely concern anyone familiar with the concept of proper dosing. This will help you rest peacefully through the night. She whispers while offering you a wooden cup containing liquid that looks like it was strained through cloth that had been used for purposes you'd rather not investigate. The mixture contains valerian for calming the spirits, poppy extract for easing pain, and mandrake root for ensuring deep, restorative sleep that allows your body's natural healing processes to work without interference from conscious worry or physical discomfort. The night draft tastes exactly like what you'd expect from a medieval sleep aid, prepared by someone whose pharmaceutical training consisted of folk wisdom passed down through generations of people who may or may not have survived their own medical experiments. The valerian contributes an earthy bitterness that suggests someone tried to create medicine by dissolving old boots in vinegar, while the poppy extract adds a sweet heaviness that makes your tongue feel like it's been wrapped in medieval cotton. The mandrake root, according to Sister Agatha, provides the deep sleep effects, though its primary contribution seems to be making everything taste like it was seasoned with concentrated nightmares. Within minutes of consuming Sister Agatha's pharmaceutical masterpiece, you begin to understand why medieval people believed in supernatural influences on human consciousness. The boundaries between waking and sleeping become negotiable concepts, while your perception of time and space adopts the fluid characteristics of medieval philosophy applied to personal experience. Sounds become more vivid while simultaneously seeming to come from increasingly impossible distances, and the familiar discomfort of your straw bedding transforms into something that feels like floating on a sea of questionable medieval comfort. But even Sister Agatha's chemical assistance can't completely mask the nocturnal reality of plague house life, which includes sounds that would challenge the sleep of people with much stronger pharmaceutical support. Willem's nighttime routine includes extended conversations with business associates who may or may not exist, conducted in voices that range from normal speaking volume to what can only be described as aggressive price negotiation with invisible buyers who apparently drive very hard bargains. 12 shillings per stone. And that's my final offer. Willem announces to the darkness with the authority of someone conducting serious commercial negotiations. But the quality has to be prime Leicester fleece, properly sorted and free from vegetable matter. I won't accept anything that's been contaminated by inferior breeding or inadequate processing. His imaginary business partners seem to be equally demanding negotiators, as Willem's side of these conversations suggests that medieval trading involved more heated argumentation than most modern legal disputes. Marguerite's nighttime dancing episodes continue with the regularity of a medieval clock, though the darkness adds new dimensions to her involuntary performances that make them simultaneously more mysterious and more disturbing. Without visual confirmation of what's causing the rhythmic thumping and rustling sounds from her bed, your imagination provides explanations that are probably worse than the reality. Though given that the reality involves uncontrollable muscle spasms caused by plague-induced neurological complications, your imagination has to work fairly hard to come up with worse alternatives. The sounds of Marguerite's nocturnal choreography create what amounts to an irregular percussion section in the plague house's nighttime symphony, punctuated by occasional verbal accompaniment as she mutters dance instructions to herself or comments on her involuntary performances. Left foot, then right, then spin, she whispers during one episode, though the spinning wasn't supposed to be quite so vigorous, and I definitely wasn't planning to include that leap at the end. Tom's contribution to the nighttime soundscape consists of snoring that would be impressive if it weren't so clearly audible through several layers of medieval construction and questionable building materials. His respiratory performances range from gentle rumbling that suggests a contented medieval farm animal to explosive outbursts that sound like someone operating a particularly aggressive bellows system designed for industrial metalworking rather than personal breathing. The remarkable thing about Tom's snoring is its apparent correlation with his overall health. The louder and more consistent his nighttime breathing performances, the better he seems to be feeling during daylight hours. Brother Thomas has developed a theory that vigorous snoring indicates strong vital spirits successfully battling the corrupt humors, making Tom's nocturnal sound effects a positive prognostic indicator that everyone else finds simultaneously reassuring and completely maddening. Father Benedict's nighttime activities continue his daylight theological discussions, though darkness adds new participants to his invisible conferences and expands the scope of his scholarly debates to include topics that wouldn't be covered in most medieval theology curricula. His conversations with saints and church fathers apparently continue around the clock. But nighttime brings what appear to be more controversial figures and more heated doctrinal arguments. Augustine, you stubborn North African, Father Benedict announces to the darkness with the confidence of someone conducting a legitimate academic debate. Your theories about predestination create logical problems that you never adequately addressed in your earthly writings. If salvation is predetermined, then why does divine justice require earthly suffering as a test of faith? His invisible conversation partner apparently provides responses that Father Benedict finds unsatisfactory, as these theological discussions often escalate into what sound like heated academic arguments conducted across the centuries. Historians still argue whether Father Benedict's nighttime theological conferences represent genuine mystical experiences, fevering-induced hallucinations, or simply the natural result of a scholarly mind trying to maintain intellectual activity while recovering from plague in a medieval medical facility. The evidence suggests that his invisible discussion partners occasionally provide information that Benedict couldn't have known through normal means, though whether this represents divine revelation or the remarkable creativity of a delirious mind remains an open question. Lady Constance's nighttime activities focus on what she calls death preparation, which involves composing elaborate final letters to family members, friends, and various individuals who apparently wronged her at some point in the past. These nocturnal literary efforts are conducted in whispers that carry clearly through the plague house's questionable acoustic properties, providing everyone else with detailed information about Lady Constance's personal relationships and her remarkably comprehensive list of people who owe her money, apologies, or both. Dearest cousin Margaret, she whispers while apparently writing by candlelight, if you receive this letter, it means that I have succumbed to the pestilence that has claimed so many of our acquaintances. Before I join the heavenly choir, I feel compelled to mention that you still owe me 3 silver pieces from our card game last Christmas, and also that your husband was definitely flirting with the miller's daughter at the Harvest Festival. Her final correspondence apparently covers decades of social slights and financial disputes with the thoroughness of someone who believes this might be her last opportunity to set the record straight. Master Aldrich's nighttime behavior remains as mysterious as his daytime activities, though darkness seems to intensify whatever unusual qualities make his case so interesting to Brother Thomas. His sleep talking includes what sound like multiple languages, mathematical calculations that involve numbers too large for medieval commerce, and occasional technical discussions about subjects that won't be invented for several centuries. The orbital mechanics require compensation for atmospheric friction. Aldrich mutters during one particularly incomprehensible episode, while the electromagnetic field variations suggest solar influence beyond normal parameters. Adjust the crystalline matrix to compensate for harmonic resonance, but maintain thermal equilibrium to prevent cascade failure. Whether these nocturnal technical discussions represent fever dreams, memories from his mysterious scholarly background, or something more unusual remains unclear, but they definitely contribute to the Plague House's reputation for attracting unusual cases. Goodwife Martha's nighttime activities consist primarily of practical management tasks that continue her daylight role as unofficial supervisor of group living arrangements. Even in sleep, she apparently monitors everyone else's nighttime behavior and provides commentary that ranges from helpful advice to pointed criticism of people's nocturnal habits. Willem, those wool prices are completely unrealistic for current market conditions, she announces during one of Willem's more enthusiastic business negotiations, and you're keeping everyone awake with your imaginary commerce. Tom, that snoring suggests you need to turn on your side before you wake the entire city. Marguerite, dear, try to keep your dancing episodes to a reasonable volume. Some of us are trying to sleep despite the pharmaceutical assistance. Her practical approach to nighttime management extends to monitoring the candles to prevent fires, checking that everyone has adequate blankets, and making sure the chamber pots are positioned where people can find them in the dark without creating sanitation disasters that would complicate everyone's recovery process. Martha's vigilance makes her the unofficial night supervisor of Plague House operations, though her authority extends only to matters of practical survival rather than medical treatment decisions. The physical environment of the Plague House at night creates its own challenges that daylight mercifully conceals. The candles provide inadequate illumination while producing smoke that combines with the existing air quality issues to create an atmosphere that would challenge the respiratory systems of healthy people, let alone plague patients whose lung function is already compromised by medieval medical treatments and the disease itself. The temperature regulation system, such as it exists, operates entirely according to seasonal weather patterns and the collective body heat of Plague House residents. Winter nights mean shivering under thin blankets while trying to conserve body warmth through shared misery and strategic positioning near other people. Summer nights involve slow cooking in woolen clothing and medieval bedding, while insects that apparently view Plague Houses as five-star dining establishments conduct their own nighttime activities around, on, and occasionally inside the various human hosts. The sounds from outside the Plague House provide a constant reminder that the world continues its activities despite your medical situation. Though the nighttime soundscape of medieval London suggests that the outside world has its own challenges that make Plague House residency seem relatively peaceful by comparison. Distant bells toll for reasons that could range from religious observances to announcements of new deaths, while occasional shouts and sounds of movement suggest that city life continues with the sort of vigor that medieval people maintain even during pestilence outbreaks. Guard patrols pass by periodically, their footsteps and equipment creating sounds that remind you that Plague Houses exist under civic supervision designed to prevent the spread of disease through unofficial patient escapes. The guards' conversations, when audible, suggest that medieval law enforcement approaches Plague House security with the same enthusiasm that modern people reserve for hazardous waste disposal necessary work that someone has to do, but not the sort of career opportunity that generates much competition. The most unsettling aspect of nighttime in your Plague House involves the sounds that you can't quite identify or locate, creaking that might be building settlement or might be something else, scratching that could be rodents or could be something you'd rather not investigate, and occasional sounds from other parts of the building that suggest activities you hope are related to normal building functions rather than anything that would require immediate attention from living people. The presence of rats, which everyone acknowledges but no one discusses in detail, becomes more apparent at night when the sounds of small creatures moving through walls and between floors create what amounts to a parallel Plague House community operating according to rodent logic and priorities that occasionally intersect with human activities in ways that make everyone uncomfortable. As dawn approaches after your first full night in medieval medical care, you begin to appreciate why Brother Thomas's treatments focus so heavily on ensuring that patients sleep as much as possible. Consciousness during Plague House nighttime hours provides educational experiences in medieval medicine, architecture, and social dynamics that most people would prefer to encounter in smaller, more manageable doses. Whether you'll survive enough nights to complete your education remains an open question, though the gradually lightening sky promises another day of therapeutic adventures designed by people whose optimism about medical science exceeds their actual knowledge by margins that would concern anyone familiar with modern concepts like evidence-based treatment or first do no harm. Dawn creeps through your plague house windows like a medieval tax collector, unwelcome, inevitable, and bringing with it demands that you're not entirely prepared to meet. With the morning light comes Brother Thomas's announcement that today's treatment schedule will include what he calls spiritual remediation, because apparently your physical suffering hasn't been comprehensive enough without adding theological complications to your medical adventure. You quickly discover that medieval medicine doesn't just treat your body, it launches a full-scale assault on your soul, armed with theories that combine religious doctrine with folk superstition in ways that would make both theologians and scientists question their career choices. The spiritual component of your plague treatment begins with what Brother Thomas describes as diagnostic prayer, designed to determine whether your illness represents divine punishment for specific sins, a general test of faith, or possibly demonic interference with your spiritual development. This theological triage process involves extended prayer sessions where Brother Thomas attempts to communicate directly with divine authorities about your case, while you lie in bed wondering whether anyone mentioned to God that you'd prefer a second opinion from a physician who doesn't conduct medical consultations through prayer. Lord, reveal to your humble servant the spiritual root of this affliction. Brother Thomas intones while kneeling beside your bed in a posture that suggests he's prepared to maintain this prayer position until he receives a definitive divine diagnosis. Is this pestilence a consequence of personal sin requiring specific penance, or does it serve a higher purpose in the divine plan for this soul's spiritual development? Grant us wisdom to understand your will and knowledge to apply appropriate spiritual remedies. The diagnostic prayer sessions can continue for hours, during which Brother Thomas maintains intense concentration while occasionally reporting on what he believes are divine communications regarding your condition. These revelations range from specific instructions about penance requirements to general theological insights about the nature of suffering, all delivered with the confidence of someone who has established a direct telecommunications link with heaven and receives regular updates on divine medical policy. The Lord has revealed that your illness stems from excessive attachment to worldly possessions, Brother Thomas announces after one particularly lengthy prayer consultation, combined with insufficient gratitude for divine blessings and a tendency toward prideful thoughts about your own achievements. The fever represents purifying fire designed to burn away these spiritual impurities, while the swellings indicate areas where sinful influences have accumulated and require specific spiritual attention. This spiritual diagnosis leads to the prescription of what Brother Thomas calls targeted penance, designed to address the specific sins supposedly causing your physical symptoms. The penance requirements are remarkably detailed and suggest that divine justice operates according to principles that would make a medieval accountant impressed by the precision of the spiritual bookkeeping system apparently governing human health and eternal salvation. Your daily penance routine includes reciting specific prayers at designated times, each prayer supposedly addressing different aspects of your spiritual condition while contributing to the overall process of divine healing. Morning prayers focus on gratitude and humility, designed to counteract the prideful thoughts that Brother Thomas believes contributed to your illness. Midday prayers emphasize penitence and confession, targeting the worldly attachments that supposedly weakened your spiritual immune system. Evening prayers concentrate on submission to divine will, preparing your soul for either recovery or eternal salvation, depending on God's ultimate plan for your case. The prayer requirements alone would exhaust someone in perfect health, but Brother Thomas insists that spiritual effort during illness demonstrates faith that encourages divine intervention in your recovery process. Each prayer must be recited with proper attention and sincere repentance, because half-hearted spiritual effort apparently produces correspondingly limited therapeutic results from divine sources who monitor the quality of human religious performance with standards that would challenge professional theologians. But prayer represents only the beginning of your spiritual treatment program. Brother Thomas also prescribes what he calls penitential fasting, designed to purify your body while demonstrating spiritual discipline that supposedly encourages divine mercy toward your medical condition. This involves reducing your already minimal food intake to levels that would concern modern medical professionals, while maintaining the energy necessary for extended prayer sessions and participation in other therapeutic activities. Fasting purifies both body and soul. Brother Thomas explains, while reducing your breakfast portion to quantities that would barely sustain a medieval sparrow, by eliminating the physical grossness that interferes with spiritual development while demonstrating to divine authorities your commitment to prioritizing eternal concerns over temporal comfort. The hunger pangs you experience represent spiritual hunger being awakened as your soul seeks proper nourishment from divine sources. The fasting requirements are calibrated according to Brother Thomas's assessment of your spiritual condition and the severity of sins supposedly causing your illness. Light fasting involves reducing food intake by half while maintaining adequate nutrition for basic survival. Moderate fasting reduces meals to simple bread and water, eliminating anything that might provide pleasure or excessive nourishment. Severe fasting, reserved for cases involving serious spiritual corruption, limits consumption to minimal quantities of bread and water while requiring extended periods of complete abstinence from all earthly nourishment. Your particular case apparently qualifies for moderate fasting, which means surviving on portions that would challenge a medieval monk during Lent while maintaining enough strength to participate in prayer sessions that require sustained mental concentration and occasional physical demonstrations of penitential sincerity. The combination of reduced nutrition and increased spiritual demands creates what Brother Thomas describes as productive spiritual tension that supposedly accelerates both physical healing and eternal salvation. The spiritual treatment program also includes what medieval medicine calls protective devotions, designed to shield you from demonic influences that might be complicating your recovery process. These devotions involve wearing various blessed objects, reciting specific prayers at designated times, and participating in religious ceremonies that supposedly create spiritual barriers against supernatural interference with your medical treatment. The blessed objects include a small cross made from wood that supposedly came from a tree that grew near a holy shrine, though the chain of custody for this religious provenance would challenge modern authentication standards. You're also given a cloth pouch containing what Brother Thomas describes as sacred relics, small fragments of bone that allegedly belonged to saints who specialized in healing plague victims, though their effectiveness appears to depend more on faith than on any verifiable historical connection to actual medieval saints. These relics contain spiritual power that radiates healing influences into your immediate environment. Brother Thomas explains, while hanging the pouch around your neck with the solemnity of someone conducting a medical procedure of cosmic significance. Saint Roch suffered from plague during his lifetime and developed particular expertise in spiritual remedies for pestilence. These bone fragments carry his accumulated wisdom and divine favor, creating a protective field that demons cannot penetrate while encouraging angelic assistance in your recovery process. The protective prayers must be recited according to precise schedules that coordinate with astrological influences and liturgical calendar requirements, creating what amounts to a spiritual timetable that would challenge modern scheduling software. Different prayers are required at sunrise, noon, sunset, and midnight, each designed to address specific types of supernatural threats that supposedly become more active during different parts of the daily cycle. Dawn prayers protect against demons who attack during the transition from night to day. Brother Thomas instructs while providing you with a schedule that looks like it was designed by someone who treated spiritual warfare as a full-time occupation requiring military-level planning and logistics. Noon prayers counteract the malevolent influences that gain strength when the sun reaches its peak power. Sunset prayers prepare your soul for the nocturnal spiritual battles that occur while your conscious mind sleeps and cannot provide active resistance to supernatural attack. Historians still argue whether medieval spiritual medicine represented genuine religious practice or elaborate placebo treatments designed to provide psychological comfort during medical crises that exceeded the capabilities of available physical remedies. The evidence suggests that practitioners like Brother Thomas genuinely believed in the connection between spiritual condition and physical health, creating treatment programs that addressed both earthly symptoms and eternal salvation with equal seriousness and roughly equivalent levels of theological sophistication. The spiritual diagnosis process also includes what Brother Thomas calls dream interpretation, designed to identify supernatural influences affecting your recovery through analysis of nighttime experiences that supposedly reveal information about your spiritual condition and divine intentions regarding your illness. Every dream element receives detailed analysis according to religious symbolism and theological significance, creating interpretations that read like medieval art criticism applied to your unconscious mental activity. Last night you dreamed about a white horse carrying a rider dressed in red. Brother Thomas notes while consulting what appears to be an encyclopedia of religious dream symbolism, which indicates that divine mercy, represented by the white horse, is struggling against the corrupted blood humors, symbolized by the red rider, for control of your spiritual development. The fact that the rider was carrying a sword suggests that this spiritual battle will require aggressive intervention through increased prayer and possibly additional purgative treatments. Your dreams apparently provide a direct window into the cosmic struggle being conducted over your soul, with different symbols representing various supernatural forces competing for influence over your recovery process. Angels appear as bright figures or beautiful music. Demons manifest as dark animals or unpleasant sounds, and various saints contribute healing influences that appear as specific colors, scents, or sensations that trained interpreters like Brother Thomas can decode according to established theological principles. The spiritual treatment program culminates in what Brother Thomas calls consecrated healing ceremonies, designed to invoke direct divine intervention in your medical case through formal religious rituals that combine prayer, blessing, and what amounts to supernatural customer service requests submitted through proper ecclesiastical channels. These ceremonies involve multiple participants and require coordination with church authorities who supposedly have enhanced access to divine medical consultants. The healing ceremony begins with extensive preparation that includes fasting by all participants, purification of the plague house environment through burning blessed herbs, and arrangement of religious objects according to patterns that supposedly focus spiritual energy while creating appropriate conditions for divine intervention. Brother Thomas coordinates these preparations with the enthusiasm of someone organizing a medieval conference on supernatural medicine, complete with scheduling requirements that would challenge modern event planners. The ceremony must be conducted during the waxing moon when divine influences are strongest. Brother Thomas explains while arranging candles, crosses, and religious texts according to geometric patterns that apparently facilitate communication with heavenly medical authorities, with all participants maintaining proper spiritual discipline through prayer and fasting that demonstrates our collective commitment to prioritizing your eternal salvation over temporal concerns about physical comfort. The actual healing ceremony involves extended group prayer sessions where Brother Thomas and any available clergy attempt to negotiate directly with divine authorities regarding your medical case, while you lie in the center of the religious activity wondering whether anyone has mentioned to God that you'd also appreciate some conventional medical attention alongside the spiritual intervention. The prayers include specific requests for miraculous healing, general appeals for divine mercy, and what amounts to theological litigation arguing that your case deserves priority attention from heaven's medical department based on your spiritual progress and demonstrated commitment to religious rehabilitation. Brother Thomas presents your case with the thoroughness of a medieval lawyer arguing before a divine court that operates according to principles that combine religious doctrine with cosmic justice in ways that would challenge both legal scholars and theologians. Merciful Lord, this soul has demonstrated sincere repentance and spiritual discipline through faithful participation in prescribed penance. Brother Thomas argues while maintaining the sort of formal rhetoric that suggests he's filing official paperwork with celestial bureaucrats, and therefore deserves consideration for miraculous intervention that would demonstrate your divine mercy while providing inspiration for other faithful souls who witness this healing. Grant that this plague may be lifted as testimony to your power and encouragement for all who trust in your infinite compassion. The ceremony concludes with what Brother Thomas calls expectant observation, during which all participants monitor your condition for signs of immediate divine intervention while maintaining prayer vigilance that supposedly encourages continued supernatural attention to your case. This observation period can continue for hours, during which every minor change in your symptoms receives detailed theological interpretation as possible evidence of ongoing divine medical consultation. Whether the spiritual treatment program provides actual medical benefits or simply creates elaborate psychological support systems that help patients maintain hope during serious illness remains an open question that medieval medicine approaches with confidence that would be admirable if it weren't combined with such complete ignorance of basic human anatomy and disease processes. The integration of religious practice with medical treatment creates healing environments that address both physical symptoms and existential concerns about suffering and mortality, though the therapeutic effectiveness depends more on individual faith and psychological resilience than on any verifiable supernatural intervention in human physiology. As evening approaches after your first full day of spiritual medicine, you settle into your straw bedding surrounded by blessed objects and protected by prayers that supposedly shield you from demonic interference while encouraging divine attention to your recovery process. Tomorrow will bring new spiritual challenges as Brother Thomas continues his comprehensive assault on your soul, armed with religious theories that are simultaneously profound and completely useless for treating actual plague symptoms. Tonight, though, you're left to contemplate whether divine intervention might actually be preferable to continued exposure to medieval spiritual medicine, which approaches the cure of souls with the same enthusiastic ignorance that characterizes its treatment of human bodies. The morning sun illuminates your plague house with all the cheerful optimism of a medieval debt collector, and with it arrives Master Edmund, the facility's administrator, carrying a leather-bound ledger that he consults with the devotion most people reserve for religious texts. You quickly discover that your plague house operates according to economic principles that would make a modern hospital billing department weep with envy, combining medieval commerce with medical care in ways that transform your recovery process into a financial adventure that might be more dangerous to your long-term prosperity than the actual plague. Master Edmund approaches your bedside with the professional courtesy of someone whose job involves extracting money from people who are too sick to argue effectively, though his accounting methods operate according to medieval bookkeeping principles that would challenge modern auditors and definitely concern anyone familiar with transparent pricing structures. His ledger contains what he proudly describes as comprehensive fee schedules for all therapeutic services, though the actual costs appear to fluctuate according to factors that include your apparent wealth, social status, and how desperately you seem to need the treatments. Good morning, Master Edmund announces with the cheerful efficiency of someone who has learned to discuss financial matters with dying people without losing his appetite for breakfast. I trust Brother Thomas has explained our therapeutic program and that you're satisfied with the quality of care you're receiving. Now, let's review the costs associated with your treatment plan and arrange payment schedules that accommodate both your medical needs and your financial capabilities. The fee structure for Plague House services operates according to what Master Edmund calls graduated pricing based on therapeutic complexity and individual circumstances, which translates roughly to we charge whatever we think you can afford, plus extra fees for anything that sounds remotely medical. Basic accommodation, your straw bed, access to chamber pot facilities, and inclusion in group meal service constitutes what he terms foundation charges that apply to everyone regardless of their specific medical requirements or treatment outcomes. Foundation charges are calculated at 6 pence per day. Master Edmund explains while consulting his ledger with scholarly intensity, which covers lodging, basic nutrition, and access to our medical staff for routine consultations. This represents exceptional value considering that private physicians charge 12 pence just for making house calls, and our facility provides around-the-clock care from qualified practitioners who specialize in pestilence treatment. 6 pence per day, you quickly calculate, represents approximately 2 weeks' wages for a skilled craftsman, making Plague House residency a significant financial investment that assumes you'll either recover quickly or die before the costs become completely unaffordable. Master Edmund's pricing philosophy apparently operates on the optimistic assumption that people seeking medical care during plague outbreaks have unlimited resources and minimal concern about long-term financial planning. But foundation charges represent only the beginning of your financial adventure in medieval medical care. Each specific treatment prescribed by Brother Thomas incurs additional fees calculated according to what Master Edmund describes as therapeutic complexity ratings and resource requirements, creating a billing system that would make modern healthcare administrators question whether they've been sufficiently creative in their approach to medical pricing structures. Bloodletting services are charged at 2 pence per session. Master Edmund continues while making notes in his ledger with a quill that requires frequent dipping in ink that appears to be more expensive than most people's daily food budget. With additional fees for premium instruments, astrological timing consultations, and post-procedure monitoring. The silver lancets preferred by Lady Constance, for example, incur a supplementary charge of 1 pence per use due to their superior therapeutic properties and enhanced humoral balancing capabilities. The itemized billing for your medical treatments reads like a medieval shopping list compiled by someone who confused healthcare with luxury retail services. Cupping therapy costs 3 pence per session, with extra charges for heated cups, premium suction techniques, and interpretation of bruising patterns according to advanced diagnostic methods. Purgative medications range from 1 pence for basic herbal mixtures to 6 pence for premium preparations containing mercury, exotic spices, or ingredients that Master Edmund mysteriously describes as requiring special procurement arrangements. The mercury treatments prescribed for your case represent our most sophisticated therapeutic intervention. Master Edmund explains with the pride of someone describing cutting-edge medical technology. Utilizing purified liquid metal that must be imported from specialized suppliers who maintain proper astrological timing and quality control standards. The preparation, administration, and monitoring of mercury therapy justifies premium pricing that reflects both the material costs and the advanced expertise required for safe implementation. Your daily mercury poisoning apparently qualifies as a luxury medical service that costs more than most medieval families spend on food in a month. Though Master Edmund assures you that the investment in premium therapeutic materials will definitely accelerate your recovery, while demonstrating your commitment to receiving the highest quality medical care available in 1348. Whether the mercury will kill you faster than the plague remains an open question that medieval accounting apparently doesn't address in detail. The spiritual treatment program prescribed by Brother Thomas incurs its own category of fees that Master Edmund describes as ecclesiastical service charges calculated according to the complexity of required religious interventions and the seniority of clergy involved in your spiritual rehabilitation. Basic prayers and confession services fall under standard clerical fees, while specialized spiritual treatments like exorcism, miraculous healing ceremonies, or consultation with saints require premium pricing that reflects their enhanced supernatural effectiveness. The healing ceremony conducted for your spiritual purification required coordination with 3 different religious authorities. Master Edmund notes while calculating charges that apparently apply to supernatural customer service requests, including Father Superior Benedict for the consecration of healing objects, Sister Margaret for the preparation of blessed ointments, and Master Theologian William for the interpretation of divine communications received during prayer sessions. Each specialist contributes unique expertise that justifies individual consultation fees. The religious fee structure operates according to principles that would make medieval church authorities proud of their entrepreneurial approach to spiritual healthcare, with different prayers commanding different prices based on their supposed effectiveness and the qualifications of clergy members who perform them. Standard prayers cost 1 pence each, while specialized intercessions require 2 pence, and requests for miraculous intervention start at 6 pence and increase according to the apparent difficulty of convincing divine authorities to override natural disease processes. Historians still argue whether medieval plague houses operated primarily as medical facilities or as commercial enterprises that happened to provide healthcare services as a profitable side business. The evidence suggests that successful plague houses required sophisticated financial management to survive economically while providing medical care to patients who might not survive long enough to complete their payment obligations, creating business models that balanced humanitarian concerns with practical necessity. The food service charges represent another creative approach to medical billing that transforms basic nutrition into premium dining experiences through what Master Edmund calls therapeutic dietary enhancement fees. Your daily gruel, unappetizing though it may be, apparently qualifies as specialized medical nutrition that commands prices reflecting its supposed healing properties rather than its actual nutritional content or palatability. Therapeutic meals are prepared according to precise humoral balancing requirements. Master Edmund explains while documenting charges that make your daily food costs exceed what most people spend on feast day celebrations, with ingredients selected for their specific medical properties rather than conventional culinary considerations. The wormwood and rue in your breakfast gruel, for example, must be harvested according to lunar timing and blessed by qualified herbalists, while the barley requires special processing to maximize its cooling influences. Your medicinal food apparently costs more per meal than most medieval banquets, though the therapeutic benefits remain unclear and the flavor profile suggests that someone confused medical treatment with creative punishment designed by people who had never encountered the concept of making food edible. Master Edmund's pricing philosophy treats every ingredient as a pharmaceutical compound that commands premium charges regardless of whether it provides actual nourishment or simply makes eating an ordeal that tests your commitment to continued survival. The accommodation charges include what Master Edmund describes as facility enhancement fees that cover services and amenities that you assumed were included in basic lodging but apparently represent premium upgrades that command separate charges. Window access, for example, incurs daily fees calculated according to the amount of natural light available and the supposed therapeutic benefits of exposure to outdoor air, even though the windows are covered with oiled parchment that barely allows light penetration and definitely prevents adequate ventilation. Premium bedding arrangements command supplementary charges based on straw quality and blanket materials. Master Edmund continues while documenting fees that apparently apply to every aspect of your plague house experience that isn't nailed down or legally protected from commercial exploitation. Your current accommodations include superior straw that was blessed by religious authorities and blankets woven from wool that came from sheep that grazed in consecrated pastures, creating enhanced healing environments that justify premium pricing structures. Your blessed straw and holy wool apparently cost more than most people's annual clothing budget, though their therapeutic effectiveness appears to be primarily psychological and their actual comfort level suggests that divine intervention might be required to make them remotely tolerable for extended use. Master Edmund's creative approach to accommodation pricing treats every basic necessity as a premium medical service that commands charges reflecting its supposed contribution to your recovery process. The medication disposal fees represent perhaps the most creative aspect of plague house billing, covering what Master Edmund describes as safe elimination of therapeutic byproducts and contaminated materials generated by your various treatments. This includes disposal of bloodletting materials, cleaning of cupping equipment, and what he mysteriously terms specialized handling of mercury-contaminated waste products that apparently require expensive processing methods to prevent environmental contamination. The purgative treatments prescribed for your case generate waste materials that require careful handling according to ecclesiastical guidelines for medical refuse. Master Edmund explains while calculating charges for services that you assumed were included in basic medical care, but apparently represent specialized hazardous waste management that commands premium pricing. The mercury-contaminated materials, in particular, must be processed according to alchemical principles that require consultation with qualified specialists who understand the proper methods for neutralizing therapeutic toxins. Your daily bodily functions apparently generate waste products that command handling fees comparable to precious metal processing. Though whether this reflects the actual difficulty of medieval waste management or simply Master Edmund's creative approach to finding billable services in every aspect of your medical experience remains an open question that probably doesn't have answers you'd want to hear. The administrative fees include charges for record keeping, progress monitoring, and what Master Edmund describes as case documentation for legal and medical purposes that creates written records of your treatment and recovery process. These records apparently serve multiple purposes, including medical reference for future plague cases, legal documentation in case of treatment disputes, and what sounds suspiciously like marketing materials for attracting future customers to the plague house's therapeutic services. Comprehensive medical records require skilled scribes who can accurately document treatment protocols, patient responses, and therapeutic outcomes. Master Edmund explains while charging fees for services that seem to benefit the plague house more than the patients, creating valuable references that advance medical knowledge while protecting both patients and practitioners from potential legal complications arising from treatment disputes or unexpected outcomes. Your medical records apparently cost more to maintain than most people's legal documentation, though their primary benefit seems to be protecting the plague house from liability rather than improving your actual medical care or recovery prospects. Master Edmund's approach to administrative billing treats every piece of paperwork as a premium professional service that commands charges reflecting its supposed contribution to advancing medieval medical science. The final billing category covers what Master Edmund calls facility utilization fees that apply to use of common areas, participation in group activities, and access to specialized equipment that supposedly enhances your recovery environment. These include charges for sitting in areas with better lighting, participating in group prayer sessions, and using chamber pot facilities that receive regular cleaning and maintenance. Shared facility usage requires careful coordination and maintenance that justifies supplementary charges. Master Edmund concludes while presenting you with a bill that would challenge the resources of most medieval nobles, reflecting the true cost of providing comprehensive medical care in properly maintained therapeutic environments. Your total charges for the past week amount to £3, for shillings, and 8 pence, payable immediately or according to payment plan arrangements that accommodate your current financial circumstances. £3 represents approximately 6 months' wages for a skilled craftsman, making your week-long plague house experience a financial catastrophe that might be more threatening to your long-term survival than the actual disease. Master Edmund's billing practices transform medical care into luxury consumption that assumes unlimited resources while providing therapeutic services that may or may not actually contribute to your recovery, but definitely contribute to the plague house's profitability. As evening falls over your financially ruinous medical adventure, you settle into your expensively blessed straw bedding while contemplating whether bankruptcy might actually be a preferable alternative to continued exposure to medieval healthcare economics. Master Edmund assures you that payment plans are available for patients whose resources don't match their medical ambitions, though the interest rates and collateral requirements suggest that medieval medicine approaches financial planning with the same creative disregard for reality that characterizes its approach to human anatomy and disease treatment. Tomorrow will bring new opportunities to discover just how expensive dying can become when administered by people who treat healthcare as a premium luxury service designed for customers with unlimited resources and minimal concern about cost-effectiveness. The pale dawn light creeps through your plague house windows like a medieval accountant reviewing unpaid bills, and with it comes the unmistakable sensation that your time in this educational facility is drawing to a close, though whether this conclusion will involve walking out alive or being carried out in circumstances that would make your relatives question their inheritance prospects remains a matter of considerable uncertainty. Brother Thomas approaches your bedside with an expression that combines medical optimism with theological resignation, creating what amounts to spiritual customer service designed for customers who may not survive to file complaints about the quality of their experience. Your body has somehow managed to survive a week of medieval medicine's most enthusiastic therapeutic interventions, though survive might be an overly optimistic term for your current condition, which could more accurately be described as achieving a state of biological persistence despite systematic poisoning. bloodletting, purgation, and spiritual warfare conducted by people whose medical knowledge comes primarily from books written by ancient Greeks who had never seen a human dissection. Whether this persistence represents actual recovery or simply the remarkable ability of human bodies to continue functioning despite receiving the worst medical care imaginable remains an open question. Your humoral balance has achieved remarkable stabilization. Brother Thomas announces with the confidence of someone whose diagnostic criteria consist primarily of whether you're still breathing and occasionally responding to questions, indicating that our therapeutic interventions have successfully addressed the corrupt influences that were disrupting your natural healing processes. The fever has diminished significantly, the swellings have begun to recede, and your general constitution appears to be responding positively to the comprehensive treatment program we've implemented. The fever reduction might have something to do with your body's natural immune response finally gaining the upper hand against the plague bacteria, though Brother Thomas prefers to attribute your improvement to the success of his humoral rebalancing techniques and the divine intervention encouraged by your extensive spiritual rehabilitation program. The swellings have indeed become less prominent, though whether this represents genuine recovery or simply the natural progression of plague symptoms remains unclear to anyone not trained in medieval diagnostic methods. The mercury treatments have been particularly effective. Brother Thomas continues while consulting notes that document your systematic poisoning with substances that modern medicine classifies as environmental hazards, as evidenced by the metallic taste that persists in your mouth and the slight tremor in your hands, both indicating that the liquid metal has successfully bound with corrupted humors and is carrying them out of your system through natural elimination processes. Your metallic taste and hand tremors actually represent classic symptoms of mercury poisoning, though Brother Thomas interprets these signs as positive indicators that his therapeutic approach is working exactly as medieval medical theory predicts it should. The fact that you've developed additional symptoms during treatment doesn't concern him, since medieval medicine operates on the principle that healing often requires getting sicker before getting better, especially when dealing with complex humoral imbalances that have been corrupted by plague influences. The bloodletting program has apparently achieved its intended goals of reducing excessive sanguine humors, while allowing your other bodily fluids to achieve proper proportional balance, though the weakness and dizziness you experience when trying to sit up probably have more to do with significant blood loss than with successful therapeutic intervention. Brother Thomas measures the success of bloodletting treatments by monitoring changes in blood color and consistency, rather than trivial concerns like whether patients can stand without fainting or maintain consciousness during normal daily activities. Your blood has achieved the pale, thin consistency that indicates proper sanguine balance. He observes while reviewing samples from recent bloodletting sessions. While the reduction in your pulse strength shows that your heart is no longer working excessively hard to circulate overabundant hot humors throughout your system, these changes demonstrate that we've successfully eliminated the corrupt blood that was causing your fever and swellings. The reduction in your pulse strength might actually indicate that your cardiovascular system is struggling to maintain adequate circulation after losing approximately 20% of your total blood volume over the past week. Though Brother Thomas's interpretation focuses on the positive aspects of achieving what he considers optimal humoral proportions regardless of minor side effects like weakness, dizziness, and occasional fainting episodes, your digestive system has somehow managed to process the various purgative medications, therapeutic foods, and medical beverages that constitute medieval nutritional science. Though process might be an overly generous description of what amounts to your stomach's heroic attempt to extract nutrients from substances that were never intended for human consumption and definitely weren't designed with palatability as a primary consideration. The success of our purgative treatments is evident in the thoroughness with which your system has eliminated corrupted humors. Brother Thomas notes while reviewing documentation that treats explosive diarrhea and projectile vomiting as positive therapeutic outcomes, while your continued ability to consume our therapeutic nutrition demonstrates that your digestive processes have been successfully purified and are now operating according to proper humoral principles. Your continued ability to swallow medieval medical food, probably has more to do with sheer desperation and the biological imperative to consume calories regardless of their source than with any improvement in your digestive health. Though Brother Thomas prefers to interpret your nutritional persistence as evidence that his dietary prescriptions have successfully rebalanced your internal food processing systems. The spiritual treatment program has apparently achieved satisfactory results in purifying your soul while encouraging divine intervention in your recovery process. Though measuring the effectiveness of prayer-based medical care presents challenges that Brother Thomas approaches with confidence that would be admirable if it weren't so completely divorced from verifiable reality. Your spiritual condition has improved dramatically, he announces while reviewing notes from your extensive prayer sessions and penitential activities. As evidenced by your increased devotion to religious duties and your growing acceptance of divine will regarding your earthly suffering. The fact that you no longer complain about our treatment methods indicates that you've achieved the spiritual humility necessary for complete healing. Your decreased complaining about treatment probably has more to do with exhaustion and mild mercury poisoning than with spiritual growth, though Brother Thomas interprets your passive acceptance of continued medical torture as evidence that divine grace is working through your suffering to achieve both physical recovery and eternal salvation. The combination of weakness, confusion, and periodic delirium apparently qualifies as spiritual enlightenment in medieval medical philosophy. Master Edmund arrives with his ledger to conduct what he calls discharge planning and final billing reconciliation, creating what amounts to medieval medical customer service designed to extract final payments while determining whether you're sufficiently recovered to survive in the outside world or require extended therapeutic services that command additional fees. Your recovery progress has been exceptional, Master Edmund announces while calculating charges that apparently apply to successful treatment outcomes as well as unsuccessful ones, requiring only minimal extended care and rehabilitation services before you'll be ready to resume normal activities. Our discharge planning process ensures that you leave our facility with all necessary resources for continued recovery while meeting your financial obligations for the therapeutic services you've received. The discharge planning process involves additional fees for what Master Edmund describes as transition support services that include final medical evaluations, provision of take-home medications, and instructions for continuing your recovery process without direct medical supervision. These services apparently command premium pricing that reflects their importance for ensuring successful reintegration into medieval society and avoiding relapse that might require readmission to plague house care. Take-home medications include a week's supply of mercury preparations for continued humoral balancing. Master Edmund explains while documenting charges for substances that will continue poisoning you after you leave the facility, along with purgative herbs for maintaining proper digestive purification and blessed amulets for ongoing spiritual protection against demonic interference with your recovery process. Your discharge medication package apparently costs more than most people spend on food in a month, though its therapeutic value remains questionable and its safety profile would concern anyone familiar with modern concepts like toxic dosage levels or harmful drug interactions. Master Edmund's approach to discharge planning treats continued medical poisoning as premium aftercare that justifies additional charges regardless of whether the medications provide actual benefits or simply create new health problems that might require future medical attention. The final billing reconciliation reveals that your week-long plague house experience has generated total charges of £4, 12 shillings, and 15 pence, representing approximately 8 months' wages for a skilled craftsman and making your medical adventure a financial catastrophe that might bankrupt your family for generations. Master Edmund presents these charges with the professional courtesy of someone who has learned to discuss ruinous medical bills with people who are too weak to mount effective protests. Payment plans are available for patients whose resources don't immediately accommodate their therapeutic investment. Master Edmund offers while producing legal documents that apparently transform medical debt into lifetime financial obligation with interest rates that would make medieval moneylenders impressed by the creativity of healthcare financing, with reasonable terms that allow you to honor your medical obligations while rebuilding your health and financial stability. The payment plan documentation suggests that medieval medicine approaches debt collection with the same enthusiastic creativity that characterizes its approach to human treatment, offering financing options that ensure ongoing financial relationship between plague house and patient regardless of treatment outcomes or long-term survival prospects. Whether you'll live long enough to complete your payment obligations remains an open question that medieval accounting apparently addresses through comprehensive collateral requirements and family liability provisions. Historians still argue whether medieval plague houses achieved better patient outcomes than no medical treatment at all, with evidence suggesting that survival rates may have been higher among people who couldn't afford professional medical care and were forced to rely on rest, nutrition, and their body's natural healing processes. The integration of medical treatment with commercial enterprise created healthcare systems that prioritized revenue generation alongside patient care, though the balance between these priorities often favored economic considerations over therapeutic effectiveness. As you prepare to leave your plague house, supported by a walking stick and accompanied by take-home medications that may continue your medical adventure in ways you'd prefer not to experience, you reflect on the educational value of surviving medieval medicine's most comprehensive therapeutic program. Your week-long immersion in 14th century healthcare has provided insights into human endurance, medical creativity, and the remarkable ability of bodies to survive treatments designed by people whose understanding of human anatomy came primarily from religious texts and folk wisdom passed down through generations of well-meaning but fundamentally clueless healers. The other patients in your plague house have achieved varying degrees of recovery success, creating what amounts to a medieval medical outcome study that would challenge modern healthcare statisticians. Willem has recovered enough to resume his imaginary wool trading activities, though his blackened fingertips suggest that his recovery may be incomplete. Marguerite's dancing episodes have decreased in frequency, though she still occasionally breaks into involuntary choreography that makes conversations challenging. Tom continues to demonstrate the superior constitution that comes from blacksmith work, though his appetite has finally decreased to levels that allow other patients to receive adequate food portions. Lady Constance has completed her death poetry collection and is now working on what she calls recovery verses that combine gratitude for survival with continued complaints about the quality of plague house accommodations and meal service. Father Benedict's theological discussions with invisible saints have evolved into what appear to be friendly conversations about post-plague religious reforms, suggesting that either his condition has improved or his delusions have become more optimistic. Master Aldrich remains mysterious, though his multilingual fever dreams have shifted toward what sound like technical discussions about agricultural improvements rather than incomprehensible scientific calculations. Goodwife Martha has appointed herself discharge coordinator for the group, providing practical advice about readjusting to normal life after extended exposure to medieval medical care, while ensuring that everyone understands their ongoing obligations for continued recovery maintenance and debt service to the plague house's business operations. As you step through the plague house door into the outside world, supported by your walking stick and clutching your bag of potentially toxic medications, you carry with you the knowledge that you have survived one of history's most comprehensive medical adventures. Though whether this survival represents successful treatment or simply exceptional personal constitution remains an open question that medieval medicine approaches with confidence that would be admirable if it weren't so completely divorced from scientific reality. The streets of medieval London stretch before you like a maze designed by people who had never heard of urban planning, while the sun shines with the same indifferent warmth that illuminated your world before your plague house adventure began. Whether you'll remain healthy enough to enjoy your recovery or develop new medical problems from your therapeutic medications remains to be seen, though your experience has provided education in human endurance that will serve you well regardless of whatever challenges await you in a world where medical care consists primarily of well-intentioned torture administered by people whose optimism exceeds their knowledge by margins that would concern anyone familiar with evidence-based practice. You hobble away from your plague house adventure, alive but changed, educated but traumatized, recovered but possibly still poisoned, carrying with you the remarkable knowledge that you have survived medieval medicine's most enthusiastic attempt to cure you of plague through comprehensive treatment methods that included bloodletting, mercury poisoning, spiritual warfare, and nutritional punishment, all administered by people whose medical training consisted entirely of reading books written by ancient authorities who had never seen the inside of a human body or encountered the concept that medicine should first do no harm. Behind you, the plague house continues its operations, ready to welcome new patients seeking education in medieval medical practice, while Brother Thomas prepares to apply his proven therapeutic methods to fresh cases that will provide new opportunities to demonstrate the effectiveness of humoral theory, divine intervention, and commercial healthcare administered by people whose confidence in their methods exceeds their actual knowledge by distances that could be measured in centuries of scientific progress that haven't happened yet. The shadows lengthen now across cobblestone streets where your footsteps echo with the quiet rhythm of someone who has walked through fire and somehow emerged on the other side, scarred but breathing, educated in ways that textbooks could never teach and bearing witness to the remarkable resilience of human bodies that refuse to surrender even when faced with healing methods that seem designed more for torture than recovery. Your plague house adventure fades behind you like a fever dream, though the metallic taste in your mouth and the slight tremor in your hands serve as ongoing reminders of your medieval medical education, gentle souvenirs of a time when medicine meant well but knew so little, when hope exceeded knowledge by margins that would make angels weep. The world around you settles into the soft embrace of evening, where church bells toll their ancient rhythms across a city that continues its eternal dance between life and death, commerce and compassion, knowledge and ignorance, while you carry forward the precious gift of survival earned through endurance rather than treatment, patience rather than cure, and the quiet understanding that sometimes the greatest healing happens not because of medical intervention but despite it, in the spaces between treatments where your body remembers how to mend itself according to wisdom older than books and deeper than theory. Sleep now, gentle listener, knowing that your own healing happens in quieter ways, surrounded by knowledge that grows kinder with each passing century, where medicine learns humility and treatment seeks first to comfort rather than conquer, where the plague house adventures of our ancestors serve as gentle reminders that survival often requires nothing more than rest, time, and the patient trust that morning will come again, bringing with it the eternal promise that tomorrow's healing will be gentler than yesterday's cure.